Chapter 41. The Mysterious Invitation. Duke stared at the warship in front of him, feeling a bit speechless. He had initially thought that the ticket Samir bought was for an ocean cruise ship or a merchant vessel. Never in his wildest dreams did he imagine it would be for a warship. Well, considering it was 1919, it wasn't surprising that no ID was required to buy tickets. Even 90 years later, you wouldn't need an ID card to take the train. However, boarding a warship did require some form of certification. Fortunately, all three of them had military certificates, albeit ones purchased with money. Of course, the sailors on the warship wouldn't dare question them. For special missions, it was common to use no-name identity covers. Even if the certificates weren't perfectly organized, there was always the chance that the person holding it could be a high-ranking officer, like a colonel. That's why Steve was able to handle it with money. "Boss, there really aren't any ships going to Shangdao recently," Samir said, wiping the sweat off his brow. "This ship is temporarily heading there to change the garrison." Duke waved his hand to show that it was okay. Samir was still very useful. At least he knew how to run errands. If Duke had to buy the tickets himself, he wouldn't even know where to start. After all, the world was very different 100 years ago. After boarding the ship, Duke noticed that not all the passengers were sailors. There were quite a few rich men, businessmen, courtesans, and the like. It made sense, considering Shangdao was relatively peaceful at the moment with only pirates to worry about. The UK had always been a country that enjoyed luxury. When their troops went on expeditions, they were often accompanied by drummers and other entertainers. Originally, this kind of boat could pick up some orders to escort the rich, which provided a small income. After staying in his room for about an hour, the warship Tamar set sail, but Duke was preoccupied with a thought. "Tamar, why does that name sound so familiar?" "What's the matter?" Diana walked over and asked curiously. "It's nothing, it's just that the name is very familiar," Duke said casually. "Going to Shangdao. Wait a minute." He suddenly remembered the origin of the Tamar. No wonder it seemed familiar before boarding the ship. In Victoria Harbor in 1897, there was a warship named Tamar stationed there. This ship was a British vessel stationed on Hong Kong Island and remained there until December 1941. Later, fearing that the Japanese army would seize the ship when they captured Shangdao, the British bombed and sank it in the waters near Wanchai. I have to say, the British were really cautious. Instead of fighting, they chose to destroy their own ship. After the war, on November 1946, the British government of Shangdao named some areas Tamar Ship, which later became Tamar Street in Admiralty, Tamar Government Building, and Tamar Park. Don't ask why Duke remembers it so clearly. He once wanted to write a paper and searched Shangdao 100 years ago, and this ship came up in his research. Speaking of which, it was Duke's first time on this kind of ocean liner. He had been on a fishing boat before, and had even fallen off one. Although the boats of the 1920s were still very luxurious, they looked a bit outdated. The British sure knew how to enjoy themselves. They had turned a warship into something resembling a luxury cruise ship. Samir walked over quickly. "Boss, a rich man has handed you an invitation letter, inviting you to attend a reception on the deck." "Invite me? Who is it?" Duke glanced at the invitation. There was no name on it, just a simple entry ticket. "Do you want to go to a rich man's reception?" "Rich? I don't have a cocktail dress." Diana shook her head, indicating she didn't want to go. "My wife is the most beautiful. You don't need a cocktail dress. You look good in anything," Duke said with a smile, adding in his heart, "She looks even better without anything." Diana's figure, often ridiculed by fans, isn't as small as they claim. While it doesn't match the exaggerated proportions of comic books, Duke has estimated that she is close to a C-cup. Although he enjoys the thrill of an uncontrollable surge, he finds this level of control quite satisfying. "All right then," Diana nodded. "Carlos, are you coming?" "Me? No. You guys go ahead. Just remember to bring me some dinner," Doubtson Carlos replied without looking up, engrossed in her writing and drawing. Diana was curious about what Carlos was working on, but decided not to pry further. "What are you and Carlos up to?" Diana asked Duke as they stepped outside. "Oh, it's nothing much. Remember the last time I trained with her? She didn't meet the standard. According to our bet, I owe her a small gift, but she has to crack the magic program I gave her first, Duke explained. Magic program? Diana raised an eyebrow. Yes, think of it as basic magic theory. If she can't understand it, she won't be able to use the gift, Duke shrugged with a smile. In reality, Doubtson Carlos hadn't met the standard. She had cheated, so Duke felt justified in playing a little trick of his own. Diana shook her head with a wry smile. Carlos had done some research, but as warriors from Paradise Island, they knew nothing about magic. Samir, standing nearby, looked envious. He assumed the magic program must be something valuable, unlike his own ring, which was far less impressive. However, he was confident that his future achievements would rival those of Doubtson Carlos. By the way, how are your friends? Duke asked Samir. They still refused. I expected that. The chief's family doesn't like Yankees, and Charlie is too accustomed to life in London to leave, Samir shrugged. He also disliked Yankees, finding them arrogant and rude. Of course, he would change his tune once in the United States, adapting to survive wherever he went. Oh, I see, Duke nodded, just making conversation. The chief and Charlie had faded from his life, their value nearly zero. It's a pity, boss. I couldn't keep Logan and Victor. They would have been great assets, Samir said regretfully. We'll see them again, Duke replied mysteriously. After killing Ares and returning to London, he had invited Logan and Victor to join him, but they had refused. He wasn't upset. He didn't even know what his next steps would be. Inviting them would have been pointless, though he did feel a twinge of regret. It's a bit late for updates now. I'll make sure to complete them before midnight. Next month, I'll finish the old book and update earlier. End of this chapter. Chapter 42, Mr. Stark. The Tamar is a warship, so it naturally doesn't have an open deck like a cruise ship. It is a shuttle-shaped white iron vessel, but the baffle at the bow can be opened and closed, allowing a view of the surroundings, though not the sky. You could call it a semi-open deck. The deck is filled with tables and chairs, drinks and food, with carnival men and women everywhere. The courtesans are dancing to their heart's content, and this is their home field. In front of the deck stood a group of cool bodyguards in black. Seeing Duke and the others approaching, they immediately stretched out their hands to stop them. Samir handed over the admission ticket, and after a glance, the bodyguards moved out of the way. Who is this? Such a grand occasion, Diana asked curiously. She could clearly feel the impressive flesh and blood power emanating from these 10 strong men in black. On their Paradise Island, Doubtson Carlos could have handled them alone, but outside, each of these 10 men was a force to be reckoned with. The rich man hosting the reception must have a significant background. After entering the arena, Duke found a corner and sat down. He couldn't dance, so he didn't think about entering the dance floor. Additionally, he wanted to know who had invited him. Diana also didn't want to dance, as she didn't have a gown. Samir stayed by their side. In the middle of the dance floor, a man in his 40s, wearing a suit with suspenders, was dancing passionately. His dance moves were wild, reminiscent of hip-hop from later generations, but he was undoubtedly considered crazy at this time. Very chic and very self-styled. Go your own way and let others talk. After the dance, the middle-aged man left the dance floor to wipe the sweat off his forehead. At this time, a bodyguard walked up to him and pointed to Duke's position. The middle-aged man glanced over and then walked over slowly. "Hello, Robert Stark," the middle-aged man said with a smile. For some reason, this slightly cynical smile made Duke think of someone from later generations. "No way?" "Duke," he offered, shaking his hand. "This is my wife, Diana." It was okay to call her wife. Diana had read a lot of books these days and understood the thinking of Oriental people. "I really envy you, having such a beautiful wife," Robert Stark said, reaching out to shake Diana's hand before quickly letting go. This inadvertent action immediately gained Duke's favor. You must know that nowadays, when the aristocratic spirit is not yet lonely, most people would kiss hands on such occasions. And it can be seen from the crazy dance steps on the dance floor just now that Robert Stark is a cynical person, the kind who doesn't care about outsiders' opinions at all. At this moment, he should have kissed Diana's hand, but he didn't. Obviously, the other party saw that he was an Oriental, so he didn't perform the hand kiss, and the handshake was only a split second. Although this is just a small detail, it shows the exquisite heart of Robert Stark. Please sit down. Please. After they sat down, Duke expressed the doubts in his heart. Mr. Stark, I would like to ask, why would I invite a stranger? Robert Stark smiled and poured 2 glasses of Martell. It's really nothing, just pure curiosity. I'm curious that among a group of white-skinned British people, there would be a yellow-skinned Oriental, and it's still the 35th Brigade of the 6th Division of the 3rd Frontier Army. Before he could finish speaking, he was interrupted by Duke. Yep, that's Duke's cover-up these days. Mr. Stark, are you investigating me? Duke smiled slightly, not caring about this. Just a little curiosity, Robert Stark shrugged and smiled. It doesn't matter if you don't say it. This is really a casual person. Duke didn't speak, but pointed to the black-clothed bodyguards outside the deck and asked, I'm curious about Mr. Stark's identity. Are you American? He couldn't hear it before, but now he could still hear the difference. Robert, Stack nodded. New Yorkers during the war, the United Kingdom, involvement in a government project, consultant. Since you are so sincere, I can't hide it. Me? I'm the one who defeated Ares and ended the war, Duke said with a smile, taking a sip of Martell. The taste of the fog grass was quite unfamiliar to him. Ha ha, Robert Stack chuckled. You Orientals must not be used to this sour taste. I prefer sweeter drinks. How come you don't question me for lying, or show disdain? Duke was curious. After mentioning Ares, Robert didn't show any skepticism, sarcasm, or sneer. There is a saying, the end of myth is science, and the end of science is myth, Robert Stack said, taking another sip of Martell. He seemed to enjoy the slightly sour taste. I have never doubted this saying. Who said that? Rumors suggest it might have been Einstein, but there's no concrete evidence. Even if he did say it, has he said it now? Duke didn't bother to find out who originally said it, but gave a thumbs up. You will find the truth. Tell me, is Ares 8 feet tall? Robert asked. That's really a myth, Duke replied, speechless. Then does he have 3 eyes? Where did the 3 eyes come from? Duke asked, puzzled. It's said that Zeus liked to have relations with his daughters. I heard that Zeus had a relationship with his second sister, Demeter, and gave birth to Persephone. Then is it true that he had relations with his daughter Persephone and gave birth to Zagreus and Melano? How would I know? That should be a myth, Duke said with a bitter smile. Robert Stack's curiosity was overwhelming. Duke quietly shook the woman's hand, worried that she might react violently. After all, she already knew she was the daughter of Zeus. Duke was concerned she might cut Robert Stack with a sword. After all, they were all daughters, and this conversation was alluding to her. Sure enough, Diana's face turned ugly. Duke quickly clapped his hands to appease her, but Robert Stack didn't seem to notice and continued asking questions. 2 hours passed, and it was gradually getting dark. It was a pleasure chatting with you, Mr. Duke, Robert said. Me too, Duke replied. Then see you tomorrow. See you, Duke said. Robert Stack nodded politely to Diana, then turned and left. At that moment, Duke suddenly asked, Mr. Stack, do you have a son named Howard Stark? What is the name of Tony's grandfather? It seems that this person has never appeared before. Well, I made up one with the name of Robert Jr. Don't be ridiculous. End of this chapter. Chapter 43. Your son will become an amazing person. I really didn't expect that guy to be Howard Stark's father. One of Howard's shortcomings is his serious alcoholism, which has already appeared in Captain America and is even more obvious in Agent Carter. Now it seems that this trait is inherited from his father, Robert Stark, who can drink very well. Just now, he drank a bottle of Martell and half a bottle of rum. Interesting. Duke really doesn't know how old Howard Stark was when he died. However, he was killed in a car accident on December 16, 1991, by Bucky the Winter Soldier, who was controlled by Hydra. Judging from Captain America, in 1943, he was about 30 to 40 years old. Howard Stark has indeed worked with his father since he was very young. When he was young, he was involved in various government projects during World War I and World War II. It's 1919 now. According to preliminary calculations, Howard Stark should be in his early teens now. Moreover, Duke also got a little news. New York. Because he has seen DC's Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor, as well as Marvel's Uncle Wolf Logan and saber-toothed tiger Victor, the issue of New York is very serious. You know, in DC, New York is Gotham City. P.S. Don't consider New Jersey. This monk setting shall prevail. Batman's earliest activity location was New York, which was later changed to the fictional Gotham City. One of the creators said that using a fictional city name allows readers of any city to identify with it. In fact, the main body of Gotham City is Manhattan style, Los Angeles, Chicago, and later added the styles of London West End, Hong Kong Island, and other cities. The nickname for New York is actually Gotham City. He once wondered, is this Gotham City or New York? But for now, it seems that Gotham should be gone, replaced by New York. I just don't know if Batman is still around. Should be there? How did you know Howard Stark? Diana asked curiously. She found that Duke had too many secrets. Don't lie to me. I can feel it. Want to know? Duke smirked. What do you want to do? Diana was taken aback for a moment, then smiled playfully. I'll tell you if I win. Whispering sound. Half an hour later, Duke lay on the floor and pretended to be a dead dog. Huh. No, it seems that you have to be restrained. If you continue like this, you will suffer from kidney yin deficiency. After a while, he rubbed his back and sat up with a wry smile. I've been playing big, I've been too sloppy these days, and as a result, I lost the man's face. Diana smiled playfully. Do you want to come again? No. Isn't that the answer? As for killing me? Duke rubbed his waist and eyes, hugged Diana, and went into the shower. Don't think about it wrongly. Even if he thinks about it now, he can't do it anymore, just sweating. In the field of mysticism, how much you can get a glimpse into a person's future. It's that simple? Diana said in disbelief while washing her hair. Of course, you will know in the future that Howard Stark will grow into a very great character. One of the founders of S.H.I.E.L.D., can you not beep? Oh, at this time, in the luxurious room at the other end, Robert Stark was frowning with various worries. Duke's words made him very worried. Your son is going to be a wonderful man. Although this is a compliment, how did Duke know that he has a son named Howard? It's strange. According to Duke's 20-year-old age, it is very strange to appear in the UK, still an officer, which is even more strange. Although it might have cost money, but he always felt that something was wrong. Boss, that person, do you need me to investigate? Robert Stark's head of bodyguard asked in a low voice. As the head of the bodyguard, he followed Robert at all times, so he naturally heard what they said. He always felt that the boss had been fooled again. Adams, what do you think of him? A liar, Adams said mercilessly. Heh, is he a liar? Robert Stark took a sip of brandy, his irritation evident as he curled his lips. No, you must have misread the situation, Adams. What's wrong? Adams asked, confused. Can a liar have such a beautiful wife? Maybe. She is also a liar? Oh, if Miss Diana is also a liar, then the quality of this liar is exceptionally high. I have never seen such an elegant, noble, and mysterious smile. Her demeanor surpasses even the oldest British aristocrats. This is not something a liar can simply learn to imitate. Robert Stark took another sip of brandy. As for the Protoss, can their temperament not be noble? This, Adams pondered for a moment. Indeed, upon careful consideration, the woman did seem extraordinary. And that entourage named Samir is a shrewd person who excels at flattery. However, he shows extreme respect to Duke, indicating that their relationship is far from ordinary. Analyzing these points, it's clear that Duke is not an ordinary person, which is why I invited them to the reception. Robert Stark's keen observation skills were impressive. Despite only seeing Duke from a distance of 30 meters when he boarded the boat, he had discerned so much. Boss, you're amazing, Adams exclaimed, though he remained puzzled. But boss, do you believe the fairy tales he told? Oh, half and half, Robert Stark replied with a smile, finishing his brandy in one gulp. Since it exists, it has a certain value. He wasn't the head of state, obsessed with myths and ruins. He simply used mythology to explain science. Then he knows your son. Could he be an enemy? Adams questioned again. That's what I'm worried about, but I don't recall having any enemies here. Robert Stark frowned, genuinely perplexed. His task was to participate in a British government research project. He hadn't made any controversial suggestions, so it didn't make sense for him to have offended anyone. Even if the enemy was from the United States, it seemed unlikely they would go to such lengths to invite someone to harm his son. Tomorrow, let's test him again. It seems that's our only option. Unfortunately, starting the next day, Duke avoided them. It wasn't until half a month later, when the Tamar arrived at Xiangdao, that they finally saw Duke again. End of this chapter. Chapter 44, A Century of Comparison. Half a month later, the Tamar finally arrived at Xiangdao. Robert Stark greeted Duke with a smile. "Mr. Duke, it's been so hard to see you," Robert exclaimed. "Oh, is Mr. Stark doing well?" Duke inquired. "No, it's just that I had a good conversation with you last time, and I feel a bit regretful that we haven't met these past few days," Robert replied with a laugh. Duke smiled, feeling a twinge of regret, but also a bit flustered. "Really? Don't worry, we will meet again. I plan to go to the United States after staying in Xiangdao for a while," he said. This statement puzzled Robert Stark. "Then goodbye, Mr. Stark," Duke said, waving as he led Diana and the others off the boat. Now that he had met the Stark family, Duke couldn't let the opportunity slip by. It wasn't about seeking favor, but rather about the potential connections. If he developed a close relationship with Robert Stark, wouldn't he become Howard Stark's uncle? And by extension, Tony Stark's grandparent. The thought of Tony Stark calling him Grandpa during the future battle in New York filled him with amusement. The image of a young Tony addressing an older man as Grandpa was quite entertaining. While Duke chuckled inwardly, Robert Stark, who had also disembarked, felt uneasy. This man was too mysterious, so much so that he couldn't get a read on him. "Send a telegram to General Wilson in the United Kingdom and ask him to check the details of this Duke," Robert instructed. "Understood, boss," his subordinate replied. The Tamar wasn't heading to the United States. It was merely changing defenses in Xiangdao. Robert Stark needed to transfer to the Victoria to continue his journey to New York, which would take another 10 days. He was exhausted. "Boss, this is the key card for the Repulse Bay Hotel," Samir said, approaching quickly after completing the formalities. "Well, let's take a break first," Duke replied. During this time, Samir had been covering all the expenses, but Duke didn't mind. After all, he, Diana, and Doubtson Carlos had no money. However, he knew he couldn't keep spending his apprentice's money. Once they arrived in the United States, he would need to find a way to earn some. After a refreshing bath to wash away the exhaustion, Duke began to explore the familiar yet unfamiliar city before him. He felt a mix of emotions. In his previous life, or rather in the future, he had only visited Xiangdao once and didn't know much about the city. However, he had seen it often in movies and TV shows, which gave him a sense of familiarity. But Xiangdao from 100 years ago was completely unrecognizable. There wasn't a trace of familiarity. Although it was his home country and had the same atmosphere and feeling as his previous life, it was still the world from a century ago. He didn't feel any sense of intimacy or familiarity. He decided to explore this strange city from 100 years ago and see if there were any promising magic apprentices. "This should be Central, right?" he mused. In 1919, on the waterfront of Central Island, the old HSBC Bank Building, Queen's Row, St. George's Row, Emperor's Row, and other landmarks came into view one by one. The piers in front were Queen's Pier, Star Ferry Pier, and Bugong Pier. In the future, Central would become the political and commercial center of Xiangdao, vastly different from his memories. This street, is it familiar? He wondered as he walked down a street that seemed very familiar. He didn't know its name, but it was an old street that had appeared in countless Xiangdao films, especially in the old movies of the 80s and 90s. He could still find its faint shadow. "Pottinger Street, Central," he exclaimed. "This typhoon shelter has always been a safe haven for the fishermen of Xiangdao." Duke smiled, feeling a sense of familiarity. This typhoon shelter would also appear in countless modern Xiangdao films. Of course, there was still a big difference between its appearance then and now. Before the British occupation, Xiangdao, the village was not actually a small fishing village, although most people did make a living by fishing. Strictly speaking, it was a distribution port for the transshipment of southern Guangdong spices. While walking, Diana suddenly pointed to a man in the distance and said, "Is that a whip? Do all Chinese people wear braids?" "What?" Duke followed the woman's gesture and was a little taken aback. He saw the braids. There was a vague sense of unreality. When did Kashima start cutting off the braids? Duke didn't know. He only remembered that in Project A, there were still many people with braids among the pirates. That story was set in the early 20th century, and it is also the early 20th century now. No wonder someone hadn't cut their braids. What did you say? The man, initially wanting to scold someone, turned around and realized that the person who spoke was a foreigner. He immediately bowed his head, made an apologetic smile, and then slipped away. During this period, foreigners were considered first class, and locals dared not mess with them. The two spoke Chinese, which he could understand. Why did he run away? Leave him alone, let's go. Duke grabbed Diana's hand and walked towards the hotel. He was annoyed. The Chinese people of this period still hadn't straightened their waists. The young man just now had a magic aptitude of D. He was the only one Duke saw among thousands of people along the way. But Duke naturally wouldn't waste the seed on this person, not because he scolded Diana, but because this person was too weak. His spine was not straightened, and his temperament was very poor. Once he gained strong power, he would probably lose control of himself instantly and easily commit all kinds of evil. Besides, his D-level aptitude was really not that good. If you want to teach magic seeds, you must be at least a C level. C level is barely passable. B level is best. A level is not good. Although Duke was not worried that the inheritor would get out of control, an A level's heart is too ambitious, and he feared they wouldn't be satisfied. They would want more and think more. After wandering around Shangdao for 2 days, Duke realized that he was wrong. He shouldn't have put his hopes on this place. Britain had just occupied Shangdao, and the past 20 years had been a time of squeezing the locals. Countless Chinese people's spines had been broken, and they couldn't straighten up at all. They had no hope for the future, living day to day in a mess. If you want to inherit magic, you have to go inland, especially to the group of people who are struggling. However, at this time, Stone City was still in the hands of the direct warlords. Although it was not difficult for Duke to go there, he did not insist on going to Stone City. Magic aptitude is one thing, character is another, and daring to risk one's life is yet another. He needed someone who was willing to die for the common people. Otherwise, the inheritance would be passed on, and the other party would not follow suit. After another week, he didn't find a good seedling in Shangdao to pass on the magic, so he went to the United States with regret. End of this chapter. Chapter 45, Drawing the Medivh card again. P.S. My stomach hurts today. I ate something bad and couldn't write a 3,000-word chapter. I'm very sorry. Duke was aboard the Queen Anne, with an estimated sailing time of 10 days. Why not just cross the Atlantic from London to New York? Because he was heading to Xiangdao. At this time, there were no ocean liners from London to New York. Otherwise, Robert Stark wouldn't be on the same ship as Duke. The Victoria, on which Robert Stark was traveling, also took 10 days, and both ships were destined for Los Angeles. From there, one could take a train and after another week, reach New York. However, Robert Stark had a house in Los Angeles and didn't need to travel continuously. Duke wasn't in a rush either. Taking a boat was boring. After setting sail on the Tamar, Duke didn't come out on the second day due to seasickness, but he recovered by the third day. Even a magician couldn't escape the clutches of seasickness. However, after that, he wouldn't get seasick anymore, as his magic flow had adapted to the change in environment. Duke kicked Diana out of his cabin the day after the Princess Anne's departure because he was about to draw another card. Although Diana couldn't see the existence of the system, he still didn't want her to stay by his side, as it was too distracting. While wandering around in Shangdao, he noticed the future mage temple, but didn't make contact with it. The current temple of the mage was still different from the one in Doctor Strange. He also noticed that someone was watching him. The observer made no effort to hide. Whether it was Guyi or not, he didn't know. In any case, he didn't want to have any contact with Guyi at this time. Karmatage had always been responsible for defending against external magic attacks and magical events in various places. Guyi didn't want her disciples to get involved in wars like World War I and become tools for power struggles. In her eyes, the current war was insignificant compared to the responsibilities they had to maintain. The current events were within the acceptable range of normal limits. They would only intervene if a magical accident occurred. She didn't know about Ares' manipulation of World War I, and even if she did, she wouldn't intervene. Strictly speaking, Ares' power was divine power, not magic. Although nowadays, the boundaries between divine power and magic were blurred, when Ares and Diana engaged in a terrifying battle, she was aware of it. However, there was no need to participate, as Ares was quickly killed. In fact, Gu Yi had noticed Duke as early as in London, the night Duke defeated Logan and Victor. Despite the limitations of the spell, how could he resist the gaze of the Ancient One? However, after confirming that Duke wasn't a bad person, she decided not to show up for the time being. After returning to Shangdao, she unexpectedly noticed Duke's presence again, but didn't contact him. Likewise, Duke had no intention of reaching out to someone from Karmatage. Their magic inheritance was completely different from his. Although the magic aptitude accepted by Gu Yi was undoubtedly good, there was no need to find a disciple to inherit it. Besides, Duke didn't want to compete with Gu Yi for a magic apprentice. Subconsciously, he still had some fears about this great power. He needed to increase his strength. Duke started to draw cards after kicking Diana out, under the pretense of magic meditation and not wanting to be disturbed. System. The long-lost system appeared again. Host. Continue to draw cards. Host. Since you now have 82,962 talent points, this system recommends that you upgrade the talent magic draw card. After killing the German soldiers in Feldtown, Duke had accumulated 326 points, and then, after purchasing the Eye of Reality from the mall, I lost 300 points. Then I bought a magic ring, leaving me with 16 points. After killing Ares, I earned more than 36 talent points, but after deductions by the black-hearted system, I was left with 82,946 ints, so now I have 82,962 points. Upgrade? Can it still be upgraded? Of course, the host's current talent points are sufficient. The first card draw was just a novice gift package, and the position of the card draw was random. Now you can specify any file. When drawing cards on Paradise Island, all the characters are from Fairy Tail, ranging from D-level to SS-level character avatar cards. In other words, I can directly designate talent cards for SS-level characters. Yes, host. Duke didn't nod immediately, but was deep in thought. Clearly, this kind of upgrade-designated card draw would cost a lot of talent points. Judging from the system's tone, after drawing the points, there probably wouldn't be much left. But if it was as random as the first time, wouldn't it be useless if he got a D card? However, if luck was on his side, it wasn't impossible to draw something good. Luck is such an elusive thing. Getting an S card the first time was fortunate, but it might not happen every time. Gritting his teeth, Duke asked, "How many talent points do you need to specify the SS position?" 10 million. What? Duke's eyes bulged. System, are you kidding me? You must be joking, right? I'm only 8 years old. Where am I supposed to get talent points? Host, this system can lend you the points. Damn, alone. Duke was bewildered. This would clear his talent points all at once, and not only that, but he would also owe points with interest. What a profiteer. Apart from cursing, he didn't know what else to say. Then, just like the first time, he wasn't in a hurry to extract powerful talent magic right now. If he could save talent points, he had to save them. After all, there wouldn't be many opportunities like the one he had when he defeated Ares. Owing nearly talent points all of a sudden was too much pressure, especially with interest. Is the host sure? Wait a minute, isn't there any catch here? Host, the first time was a novice gift package for you, which was a reward. The chance of drawing an S card was 10%, while the chance of drawing an SS card was 1%. After that, if you draw cards as before, the probability will be lowered. You have a 0.1% chance of getting an SS card and a 1% chance of getting an S card. Hold on, the adjustment has been lowered by 10 times? Are you so black-hearted? Duke was very hurt. This was too unfair, right? 10 times, just like that. Host, if you want to draw an SS card, you need to choose a lottery machine with 10,000 chances. In addition, the probability remains unchanged at 0.1%. Walter? Duke was stunned again. Just in case, you're right. It's not just a reduction in probability, but even the talent points for the lottery are set so high. This is simply fatal. The probability of 8 versus is holding the sun. No matter how you look at it, the results are all unattainable. After 8 draws, can he get an SS card? If he's lucky, he might get an S card. If he's unlucky, he might end up with D-level talent cards. If that's the case, he would cry to death with no place to cry. Duke was wondering if he should just buy it in the system store and use his talent points to upgrade later. The results were swept away. Hold Nima? This upgrade requires more points. It takes 10 points to upgrade from a hero to a legendary realm, and different talents require different points. The best one actually needs talent points. Upgrading to the legendary realm is already a monumental task, but advancing from the legendary realm to the demigod level requires an astronomical 100 million talent points. Duke was flabbergasted. Where on earth am I supposed to earn that much? Should I just kill Gu Yi? He scratched his head in frustration. Even if he managed to kill Gu Yi, he doubted he could amass 100 million points. Then, how about drawing an S card? Duke asked, hoping for a more feasible option. If the host wishes to draw only S cards, it will require 8,000 talent points per draw, the system responded. That's not fair. It's not fair. Duke exclaimed, nearly slamming the table in anger. The lottery machine that could draw an SS card required 8,000 points, but the one for S cards in the next tier cost only slightly less. The difference was negligible, and it felt like a ripoff. As for the A-level talent card, Duke didn't even consider it. A-level talents were a different league altogether. While a high-rank fireball could destroy a mountain, it still felt inferior. Moreover, having already obtained an S card, downgrading to an A card felt like a step backward. He couldn't bring himself to do it. This is so unfair. I want to protest, Duke shouted, slamming the table again. He was inclined to spend 10,000 talent points on a gamble. After all, gambling was a game of chance. With a single draw, the chance of winning an SS card was 0.1%, and drawing 8 times only increased it to 0.8%. Drawing an S card 10 times gave a 10% probability, but with a one-time bet of 10,000 points, he could draw SS cards 100% of the time. Although some of those character cards might not be to his liking, they were still SS card talents, and it was a guaranteed 100%. The choice seemed obvious: 0.8%, 10%, 100%. The probability issue was a no-brainer. Alright, since it is indeed a bit strict, this system can offer the host a small concession, the system announced. What kind of concession? Duke's face lit up with hope. You can preview the characters available in the SS card pool, the system offered. That's it. Duke's excitement deflated. How does that help me? It just makes me more tempted. Otherwise, the system retorted, it's still not fair. In that case, I won't draw. I'd better save my points, Duke said, trying to negotiate. He instinctively felt that while the system sounded like a cold machine, it might be open to bargaining, though the price wouldn't change much. Very well, the host's interest can be noted, the system concluded. End of this chapter. Chapter 46. Drawing the Mediv card again. Just erasing the interest? That still leaves, well, 17,038 talent points. It's a loss. Duke thought, the system must be in urgent need of talent points, right? Let's give it a try. It's not enough to just erase the interest. I can withdraw it, but you have to erase the more than 7,000 points I owe. Host, please take back this silly idea. This is impossible. Absolutely impossible. Absolutely. Forget it. I won't draw anymore. Let's keep it. Duke sighed. It is absolutely impossible to erase the talent points owed. Please stop fantasizing about it, host. But he knew there would be a catch. This system can offer the host a weapon or equipment from the drawn character card. Of course, this is also random. Duke pondered. This was probably the maximum tolerance limit of the system, and it would be difficult to bargain any further. But I can accept a random weapon or equipment, but you can't just dismiss me with a small gadget, right? I need the personal equipment of the character card. I can only guarantee that it is the equipment and weapons that the character card has used before. As for what the host can get immediately, it depends on the host's luck. It seemed this was the biggest concession the system would make. Well, okay, I'm betting. The magic items in the system mall ranged from 10 points to 100 million points. The lowest was 10 points, and the highest was 100 million points. The weapons and equipment used by the SS card characters, even if they were used during their magic apprenticeship, must be amazing. If he was lucky, he would get high-level equipment immediately and make a lot of money. In short, there was a trick. After all, this was also an extra earn, which belonged to extra money. As for how much this extra money was worth, it really depended on luck. Then let's begin. Wait, what's wrong? Didn't you say that you want me to see what SS cards are available? System, you can't go back on your word. If you want to be so dishonest, how can I trust you? The system was very angry, probably because Duke was really pushing it. It stopped hesitating and directly released a big red slot machine. The screen of the slot machine was full of red SS cards. Duke curled his lips a little, thinking that the SS card slot machine was so tall, but it turned out that the color had changed. It was also red at the beginning, but now it was all red, and he couldn't find other colors. After seeing the red SS card on the screen, he jumped up from the bed. Damn it, he really made a lot of money this time. Guardian Dragon, Spellweaver, Blue Dragon King, Malygos. In World of Warcraft, although his end is very sad, and although he is not the beginning of magic, as the magic Guardian Dragon, Malygos has the power to control magic. In other words, he is also the ancestor of the magic world, and he is in charge. In addition to him, the rest of the Guardian Dragons also exist, and it seems that they are all defined by the system as magic traits. For example, the Red Dragon Queen holds the power of life, which can be called life magic. Bronze Dragon King Time Magic, Black Dragon King Earth Magic, Green Dragon Queen Dream Magic. You know, in Marvel, there is already a Dream Master, Nightmare. Natsu Dragneel, End Mode, End. Zeref, Pure Version. Pure Version? It means you can kill people without walking casually. Duke was suddenly excited. You must know that Zeref is one of the most powerful big bosses in Fairy Tail, and the only one in the same rank as him is Black Dragon King Acnologia. Suddenly, Duke was excited again. If a piece of equipment is randomized and the Book of Zeref is produced, wouldn't that be amazing? Sister Kuanghua, Sister Liang Tianyusera, and the Dark Trafsa, Boiche Ethel, Calamity Tempest, Jackal, Black Monk Jung Keith, God of Death Bradman, etc. If all of them, the demons in these books will appear, wouldn't it be the bulls went to the sky? Damn it, only have grass in my mind. Hold the grass, hold the grass. Sure enough, Akunologia is also there. Astral Wanderer, Guardian of Tirisfal, Star Mage, Mediv. This is also a big deal. One of the most powerful mages in World of Warcraft, Mediv inherited most of the Guardian's power from his mother, the strongest Guardian. He resides in Karajan, a mage tower located in the Deadwind Pass, south of the Red Ridge Mountains. Karazhan holds a vast collection of magical books, enough to rival the magical holy land of the Mage Kingdom, Dalaran. Mediv himself is an arcane mage, but he also knows frost, fire, and other unclassified magic. The Book of Mediv records all kinds of magic and secrets. If you obtain it, it's like learning numerous types of magic at once. The artifact Chicken Stick is also the dream weapon of our generation of magicians. Then, Whitebeard Edward Newgate? Duke's eyes widened. What the hell? Is Whitebeard a magician? Oh, this may refer to the shock fruit. At first glance, it seems unrelated to magic, but upon closer inspection, it resembles Gildart's super advanced destruction magic in Fairy Tail, crushing magic. There are some similarities with the vibration fruit. As for Sky, the shockwave girl in Marvel, her ability is to create powerful shockwaves similar to seismic wave effects. Additionally, she can cause major earthquakes by generating shock energy. Although her ability is considered a supernatural power, today's divine power, magic, and supernatural power are not so different when you look at the effects. In addition to these, there are Host. I'm a little excited. Let's start. Duke wiped the drool from the corner of his mouth. In other words, even if you win Natsu, you can immediately get Natsu's scarf, and that magic scarf is also very good. The extraction method has not changed from before. The palm pattern was still on the bottom right of the screen of the slot machine, flickering and imprinted on it immediately. Then, the cursor moved rapidly on the character card. Zeref, I want the Book of Zeref. There are so many girls, so many demons. However, congratulations to your host. you have drawn one of the most powerful magicians in Azeroth, Astral Wanderer Medivh. Why do I feel so sad? Hey, it may be because of the discrepancy with expectations. Although Medivh may be stronger than Zareth, he can at least roam in any astral world. End of this chapter. Chapter 47, Drumstick. At the same time that Duke was feeling annoyed, countless pieces of magical knowledge poured into his mind. What? He screamed. The sensation was indescribable, like turning on a faucet and instantly bursting a balloon. Overwhelmed by the torrent of magic, Duke chose to let his mind slip into unconsciousness. You see, Medivh possessed most of the guardian powers of his mother, the strongest guardian, Egwin. Egwin was the legendary hero who had once slain the demon king Sargeras. Beyond these formidable abilities, Medivh's pure magical prowess was something Duke could not yet handle. Medivh, known as the Star Wanderer, had strength that surpassed demigods and was on par with the 5 guardian dragons. As the leader of the magical world, Medivh was certainly a match for the Blue Dragon King, Malygos. In World of Warcraft, top masters like Medivh are revered as astral mages. Others in this elite category include demigod Warlock, Gul'dan, legendary mage Khadgar, and hero Lothar. The difference in their power levels is stark. How could Duke, who was still at the heroic level, withstand the magical might of a demigod like Medivh? Not to mention the vast array of powerful spells Medivh knew. The sheer volume of magical books in Karajan alone would take Duke a considerable amount of time to digest. Medivh, in his free time, either roamed the astral world or read books in Karajan. He had read almost all of the massive collection of magical tomes, which numbered in the hundreds of thousands. Although many of these books contained low-level magic with no lethality, they still added to Medivh's vast magical knowledge. How much magic do you think Medivh knew? Duke's mind was overwhelmed, and he passed out. Even in his unconscious state, the system continued its tasks diligently. Congratulations to the host, the artifact Atiesh, the legendary staff of the Guardian, has been extracted immediately. If Duke were awake, he would have been ecstatic. This was the legendary chicken stick, a highly coveted magical item. In the system mall, it would require at least 50 talent points. Beside Duke's unconscious form, a drab wooden staff slowly materialized. At the top of the staff was a crow's head, or rather, a standing crow with its wings together. Although the scientific name for the bird should be raven, Duke always thought it looked like a turtle dove because of its plumpness. 3 unknown blue gemstones hung beneath the raven's claws. Those familiar with magic would sense the surging magical power within them. These were not mana sapphires, but blue dragon essence. The rest of the staff was a bare brown wooden stick, ending in a mithril staff tail engraved with runes. Upon closer inspection, one would notice that the stick body was also covered in runes, though they were not immediately obvious. These runes differed from those on the mithril staff tail. They were another kind of script. While human magic was taught by elves, and most magical weapons were inscribed with elven language, this staff was different. The end of the mithril rod was engraved with dragon language, while the staff body bore Titan characters. Compared to the long-lived elves, the ancient dragons were the true ancestors of magic, and their magic was taught by the Titans. The system is about to enter a deep sleep. The host can open the mall by itself, but can no longer draw prizes. Although Duke was in a deep sleep, these words were recorded in his mind, and he would understand them upon waking. If he were awake, he would undoubtedly yell, "Damn system! What's the point of opening the mall if I can't draw anything?" Duke owed the system so much that he was now in debt by minus 17,038 talent points. Not only could he not draw anything now, but he wouldn't be able to for a long time. At the end, it will have to stop for a few years, right? Duke! Diana, who was guarding outside, was startled by the earlier scream. She kicked open the door and rushed in. Seeing Duke lying motionless on the bed, she panicked. Duke, what's wrong with you? Don't scare me, Duke." She shook him vigorously, but unfortunately, Duke remained unresponsive. Dutzen Carlos, who had been writing and drawing on some paper, was also startled. He ran in, looking concerned. "What's the matter? What happened?" "I don't know. Duke said he wanted to meditate and asked me to go out. Then, not long after, I heard a scream, and then—" Diana's voice trembled with panic. "Hey, Duke, Duke Carlos, more straightforward, approached and raised his hand as if to slap Duke awake. "What are you doing?" Diana glared at him. "Ahem, nothing. I just wanted to wake him up," Duke Carlos muttered under his breath, feeling a bit embarrassed. Diana didn't have time to argue with Duke Carlos. She gently called out to Duke, "Duke, wake up, wake up." "That's not patting. You're giving him a massage." Duke Carlos rolled his eyes, feeling speechless. This gentle pat was more like a massage, promoting blood circulation. At that moment, Samir also heard the commotion and ran over. "What's the matter?" As soon as he entered, he saw Duke lying motionless, with Diana and Duke Carlos looking worried. Duke may have encountered a problem during his magic meditation. Duke Carlos shook his head. "We all know little about magic, and we don't know what to do. Hey, you are his named apprentice. Has he taught you anything?" "Not yet," Samir replied with a sad face. It was so difficult to practice magic, and now something had happened to the boss. Then he noticed some words on the wall next to him. "Hey, look quickly, there's a sentence. I'm fine. It may take a few days for me to wake up naturally." Seeing this sentence, Diana breathed a sigh of relief. The text gradually disappeared. Of course, this wasn't left by Duke. It was left by the system before it fell asleep. "So that's it. He didn't say a word and scared me to death." Duke Carlos patted his chest lightly. "Hey, what is this? Such a strange wooden stick." She was curious and reached out to grab it. "Don't move," Diana hurriedly warned, but it was too late. Duke Carlos had already grabbed the drumstick. In the next moment, the magic power exploded. Boom! A mouthful of blood flew out from her mouth. This thing... Ahem. "No, I'm hurt," Duke Carlos stammered. Diana rolled her eyes and quickly took out some medicine from Paradise Island, feeding it to Duke Carlos. You are so reckless. You'll die sooner or later." She had sensed the surging power in the wooden stick as soon as she entered, but was too worried about Duke to check it out. She never thought about it. End of this chapter. Chapter 48. The Disappearing Duke. Diana didn't bother with the chicken stick, although she realized that Duke's coma was directly related to it. Well, it should be considered an indirect relationship. The power of this wooden stick was quite strong, and it felt much stronger than her guardian silver bracelet, mantra lasso, and divine shield. She became more and more curious about Duke, who had casually created such a heaven-defying artifact, something beyond the reach of ordinary people. Thanks to being in the vast sea at this moment, if someone had found out, they would have robbed him long ago. No, this ship was not very safe anymore. She had to be careful. She couldn't guarantee whether someone had noticed the commotion just now. In fact, Diana was too tense. Unless it was a close encounter, she wouldn't feel it. Moreover, unless one's strength reached a certain level like Duke Carlos, they wouldn't feel its danger. "You two go out. I have to stay here," Duke Carlos said, rubbing her chest. She had to recuperate. Even with the medicine from Paradise Island, it wouldn't be cured in a day. The magic burst just now made her feel like her bones were about to break. "Okay," Samir also turned and left. "I will bring the meals to you on time." "Samir? Yes? Pay attention to the movement outside. What happened just now may have been noticed," Diana reminded. "I understand. Don't worry. I will keep an eye on any troubles outside." After speaking, Samir left. The magic power that erupted just now had been so strong that even he, who was at the door, felt a strong oppressive force, as if his sternum was about to be crushed. If there was such a villain. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. Duke Carlos had almost recovered. Samir had been paying attention to every move outside and had not noticed anyone watching them for the time being. On the morning of the 4th day. "Duke!" Diana exclaimed, waking up Duke Carlos and Samir, who were sleeping. "What's the matter? What's the matter?" Duke Carlos rubbed her sleepy eyes and walked in. "Duke is gone," Diana said anxiously. Duke Carlos took a look, her eyes suddenly widened. There was indeed no shadow of Duke on the bed. She then shook her head indifferently. "Did he wake up?" "Impossible. I have already searched the room, but there is no one." Diana shook her head. "Did he go out to eat then?" Duke Carlos asked. One must know that this was already the 4th day. Duke hadn't eaten at all and couldn't even open his mouth. If it wasn't for seeing his ruddy face and his stomach not growling with hunger, Diana would have gone to the ship's doctor to get some glucose. Not eating for 4 days, he must be very hungry. Maybe he went out to find food. Diana froze for a moment. This was also possible. No, once Duke woke up, it was impossible for her not to feel it. Just then, Samir walked in. What happened? The two women shouted in unison, Duke is gone. Samir was stunned, then scratched the back of his head and said in confusion, What are you talking about? Isn't the boss lying there? The two women turned their heads subconsciously with a swish, and a picture of them beeping in confusion appeared. Duke was really lying on the bed safely. Is this possible? It's all over the place. No, he was indeed not there before. The two women looked at each other, their eyes full of confusion, doubt, puzzlement, and surprise. Looking at Duke again, Diana instinctively sensed that something was wrong. Duke had indeed disappeared before, instead of being invisible, so the quilt covering him had fallen down and stuck to the bed. But now, Duke was back, but instead of lying on the quilt, he was under it again, propping it up. Why does it feel so weird? No, Duke did disappear before. Diana waved her hand and said, I testify, he really. Doubts and Carlos also testified for Diana, pointing at Duke. However, before she finished speaking, Duke disappeared again. Samir's eyes widened this time. The three were shocked to find that the quilt had fallen off the bed and was now stuck to it again. What happened? Duke and Carlos stammered, stunned. He had seen Duke disappear with his own eyes, and it felt like something out of a nightmare. Diana was equally bewildered. This was the first time she had witnessed such an event. Samir, on the other hand, could only manage a gulp, his mind racing. How long has he been gone? Doubts and Carlos suddenly asked, a thought striking him. I don't know, Diana replied, shaking her head. When I woke up, he was already gone. I searched for at least 2 minutes before you arrived. Should we wait here for a while? Doubts and Carlos suggested in a whisper. Yeah, Diana agreed. There was nothing else they could do. This was an unprecedented situation for her. I'll get you breakfast, Samir said, quickly exiting the room. As he walked, he scratched his head, pondering the mysterious disappearance. According to some reports, people had claimed to travel to the future and return after an hour. However, those instances were too brief to gather any substantial information. One man even claimed to have traveled to 1943, but his story remained unverified. After breakfast, the three of them kept their eyes glued to the bed, their gazes growing weary. Suddenly, the screen flashed, and Duke reappeared under the quilt, his head and shoulders visible. The three of them were dumbfounded once more. They couldn't fathom what was happening to Duke and were hesitant to restrain him. Over the next few days, they grew accustomed to Duke's strange behavior. He would frequently disappear and reappear, sometimes for a few minutes, other times for several hours. The room would occasionally freeze, burst into flames, or experience sudden explosions. The marshals were even called in, but Doubts and Carlos managed to deflect their concerns. Unbeknownst to them, Duke wasn't merely disappearing. He was experiencing astral wandering. The flow of magic controlled his brain, allowing him to rapidly learn Medivh's magic. These studies occurred simultaneously with deep sleep, akin to sleepwalking. While in the astral world, Duke was learning large-scale destructive magic that couldn't be cast on the ship without causing it to explode. In the room, he only cast small, non-threatening spells like freezing a bed or burning a cup. Occasionally, during his astral wandering, Duke would appear in other people's homes, causing quite a stir. For instance, a beautiful woman might open the door to find a man lying next to her boyfriend, leading her to believe her boyfriend had a secret preference for men. Such incidents were numerous and often humorous, albeit confusing for those involved. End of this chapter. Chapter 49, Eyes Glow Purple. Duke wakes up. On the 7th day, just one more day away from Los Angeles, Duke finally woke up. As for the coveted Hollywood, he wondered if the legendary goddess Hepburn would be there. Wait, Hepburn hasn't been born yet. In the restaurant, the diners were dumbfounded. This yellow-skinned Oriental man had an insatiable appetite. Duke felt like he could eat a cow, no, an elephant. The large round table was filled to the brim, but the speed of serving food couldn't keep up with the speed at which he devoured it. Pasta, hamburgers, pizza, there was never enough. Eventually, Duke simply asked for roast leg of lamb, roast beef leg, roast suckling pig, and similar dishes. According to the last rough statistics, Duke consumed enough food for at least 100 people. The most astonishing part was that his stomach didn't even bulge. Where did it all go? Duke finally understood how Luffy felt. The chefs in the restaurant heaved a sigh of relief. If Duke continued eating like this, they probably wouldn't make it to Los Angeles. The backup freezer was nearly empty, and the chefs were sweating bullets. If he kept eating, there wouldn't be enough food for tomorrow's meals. Ocean cruise ships generally calculate the necessary amount of food before departure and replenish it during transit stops. Most ships also have a backup food storage warehouse. However, Duke nearly depleted all the backup food. "Well, I'm finally full," Duke said, patting his stomach and letting out a long breath. "My wallet is going to be flat, too," Samir said, unable to laugh or cry. Duke's feast had cost him nearly half of his assets. His holdings in London were modest, consisting mainly of some working capital and a small villa. The post-war market was depressed, and the economy was sluggish. People couldn't even afford to eat, let alone buy houses. If Samir were eager to move to the United States, he'd have to sell at a lower price. "Don't worry, it will swell up soon," Duke comforted him with a smile. At that moment, a handsome blonde man approached with a haughty smile on his face. "Dude, you would definitely win #1 in a big eater competition." Duke frowned. What did this familiar-looking person want? "Dude, are you coming to America to conquer us?" The proud blonde man continued to chatter. Duke was a little surprised. How did he know? As a future god of law, was it strange to conquer the United States? But then he understood. The blonde man hadn't seen through him. He was secretly calling him a yellow monkey. The yellow peril theory was rampant during this period. Europe and the United States were very unfriendly to yellow-skinned people. The reason was the German Emperor Wilhelm II, who led Germany during World War I. This guy drew a yellow peril map, suggesting that yellow-skinned people had the potential to overthrow the hegemony of white-skinned people. He called on all European nations to unite to defend their beliefs and homes. What nonsense! Who was bullying whom, and who was invading whom? Suddenly, thinking of this terrible incident, Duke regretted not being able to go to Germany to kill that emperor. If it weren't for him, there would be no yellow peril. As for the United States, in 1882, the Chinese Exclusion Act was signed. It was ridiculous. Just over 10 years ago, the main railway artery running through the east and west of the United States was completed 7 years ahead of schedule, thanks to the hard-working and resolute Chinese workers. The early completion of this railway was largely due to the poor and despised Chinese workers. About 14,000 Chinese laborers participated, but their death rate was as high as 10%. After exploiting them, America turned its back and refused to recognize their contributions, eventually coming up with the Chinese Exclusion Act. Chapter: Confrontation at the Restaurant. Duke's anger flared as he recalled the incident. "If I go to the United States and don't squeeze every bit of value out of them, I won't be called Dew anymore." "This beautiful lady, I haven't asked for your name yet. Why are you with such a vulgar, yellow-skinned man, my lord?" The blonde man continued to chatter, oblivious to the rising tension. Diana was visibly upset. Doubtson Carlos instinctively reached for his sword, only to realize it was left in the room. "Get lost!" Duke's eyes flashed purple as he shouted. The blonde man felt a sudden, inexplicable fear, as if he were being tightly grasped by invisible hands. He muttered an apology and literally rolled out of the restaurant. The restaurant, filled mostly with white-skinned patrons, had been enjoying the spectacle. They naturally considered themselves superior, but now they were stunned into silence. The blonde man's bizarre exit had left them too confused to react. "It's just low-level spiritual magic. Boring." Duke wiped his mouth and stood up. "Let's go, wife." He couldn't be bothered to get angry with these mortals. It was like a mouse questioning whether an elephant was taller than it. As they reached the entrance, Duke glanced back. "All right, don't get lost. Send all your money to my room later." Yes, yes, the blonde man nodded quickly, scrambling to his feet. Samir couldn't help but laugh. "Is this why the boss said our wallets would soon be full? This is too much." Doubtson Carlos clapped his hands and laughed. "This is good, this is good." Only Diana frowned slightly. She felt uneasy about the situation but chose not to embarrass Duke in public. Back in their room, Duke smiled. "Why do you think I did something wrong? He just said a few bad things about you. It's not like—" Diana trailed off, not denying her viewpoint. "The problem isn't just a few words," Duke explained, briefly outlining the Yellow Peril map and the Expelling the Chinese movement. "This thing does exist, and I knew about it back in London." Diana's anger flared. How could they do this? She had seen firsthand how the British oppressed the locals in Shangdao. The Yellow Peril map was just another example of their shamelessness. It was like a man refusing to pay a prostitute and then insulting her for not being a virgin. How could they be so shameless? "It's all about benefits," Duke shook his head. "Forget it. Let's not talk about these annoying things." He anticipated facing a lot of inhumane treatment in the United States. "What happened to your eyes?" Diana asked curiously. She had noticed something was off when Duke woke up. His eyes emitted a high concentration of pure purple light, which intensified when he cast spells. Although he could suppress it, the light never completely disappeared. His pupils seemed to be coated with a strange purple hue. While it made him look more handsome, it was still unsettling. "This is the power of Arcana," Duke explained, pointing to his eyes, which once again radiated purple light. When the light was on, his pupils were obscured, the center white and the edges purple. End of this chapter. Chapter 50. Wayne, Kane, Stark, Osborne. After arriving in Los Angeles, Duke wasn't in a hurry. There wasn't much to do in New York at this time anyway. As he looked at the bare hills of Hollywood, he felt a sense of nostalgia, as if he were witnessing the birth of history. The iconic white Hollywood sign, which would become a symbol of the entertainment industry in later years, had yet to be erected. It would likely take a few more years before it stood tall. Today's Hollywood was just a small town with a population of tens of thousands. Although there were a few barn-like studios, the big studio system was only beginning to take shape. The famous Avenue of Stars was still an unknown concept. "Do you care about this town?" Diana asked curiously. No, I just think it's very lively here," Duke replied with a smile. He wasn't particularly interested in the city itself, but rather in the young and bright actresses who emerged from it. Of course, Duke could only recall a few actresses from this era: Greta Garbo, Vivian Leigh, Marilyn Monroe, Audrey Hepburn, and Elizabeth Taylor. The first two had already been born, while the latter three were still years away from their rise to fame. There wasn't much to see here yet. After wandering around for a while and failing to find any sense of familiarity, the group set off for New York again, this time by train. Duke's journey could be considered a trip around 3/4 of the world. After spending a week traveling, they finally arrived in New York, and the year had turned to 1920. "Let's find a hotel to rest for a while, and then, Samir," Duke ordered. "Yes, boss," Samir responded. "Build a good relationship with the local power players here. I need information, especially about the most powerful families and the worst areas." "Don't worry, boss." Although he didn't fully understand Duke's intentions, Samir patted his chest and promised to get the job done. They didn't need a luxurious hotel for their temporary stay. Duke had already planned their residence in New York, but he needed Samir to verify it first. "What are you planning to do?" Diana asked, her curiosity growing. "It's a secret. I'll tell you once Samir finds out," Duke replied with a mysterious smile. Duke had accumulated a lot of money along the way, mostly by robbing gangsters. Although those guys had it coming, Diana still felt uneasy about it. Duke had robbed numerous gangsters during their train journey. Diana, with her restrained and noble temperament, didn't attract much trouble. However, Doubtson Carlos was a different story. Her allure was like a fatal temptation, drawing a swarm of admirers and many with ill intentions. For those types, Duke showed no mercy. Thanks to Doubtson Carlos, he had amassed several $1 million worth of treasure over the week, which he planned to exchange for cash later. This newfound wealth also expedited Samir's actions, allowing him to gather information about New York in less than 3 days. "Boss, I'm back," Samir announced as he pushed open the door and took a sip of water. "Tell me what you found," Duke instructed. "There are 4 major families in New York, and they control almost everything. Their influence spans the entire city. One of these families has a connection to us. The Stark family, led by Robert Stark, Samir reported quickly. Robert Stark? Tony's grandfather? Interesting, Duke mused. However, the Stark family isn't the oldest in New York. This city was originally established by four major families: the Wayne family, the Elliott family, the Kane family, and the Copperpot family, Samir explained, his mouth dry from talking. Duke finally understood. Gotham City in the DC universe was originally established by four major families: the Wayne family, Batman's father, the Elliott family, Hush, the Kane family, Batman's mother, and the Copperpot family, the Penguin family. The history of the four major families is as old as this city itself. Duke was once fascinated by the place called Gotham. This city had the urban features of Manhattan, Chicago, Washington, London, and Hong Kong Island. It was a fictional city where several real cities were fused together. However, in this world he has traveled to, Gotham has disappeared, replaced by New York. The eclectic and integrated cityscapes of Gotham City are gone, and now it is the New York of the Marvel Universe. This New York, although from 100 years ago, still retains its foundational characteristics. Duke had never visited New York in his previous life, but he was surprised to find that the Elliott family, to which Silence belonged, and the Copperpot family, to which Penguin belonged, had disappeared. This city was still founded by the four major families, but over time, two of them vanished, leaving only the Wayne and Kane families. The disappearance occurred around the 1950s, and the specific reasons remain unclear. Some speculate that the Wayne family, in alliance with the Kane family, eradicated the other two families. There are numerous theories, but none are definitive. The disappearance of those two families did not concern Duke much, as he was not familiar with them. He knew little about the Wayne family, except for Batman. As for the Kane family, he only knew that it was Batman's maternal family. With the absence of those two families, the Stark and Osborn families began to rise. After 50 years of struggle, they managed to fill the void left by the other families. The Stark family is associated with the future Iron Man, Tony Stark, and the Osborn family with the Green Goblin. However, the Green Goblin has not yet been born, and Iron Man Tony, his father Howard, is still a young boy, but Howard has already shown signs of his extraordinary scientific genius. To be precise, it is not four major families, but rather two major families and two emerging families. The current Stark and Osborn families cannot yet compare with the Wayne and Kane families. They are considered second tier in terms of power and influence. Duke stroked his chin thoughtfully, reflecting on the significant changes. It was indeed a blend of Marvel and DC universes. In Marvel, the Stark family rose to prominence through Howard Stark, who founded Stark Industries and became one of the top figures in New York and the entire United States. But now, his father, Robert Stark, is still enjoying a life of leisure. What's the worst place? Duke wondered aloud. Hell's Kitchen, came the reply. End of this chapter. Chapter 51. Temporary stay in Hell's Kitchen. What's the worst place? Duke asked. Hell's Kitchen, Samir replied. Duke nodded, confirming his suspicions. The official name of Hell's Kitchen is Clinton, also commonly known as West Midtown. It is roughly bounded by 59th Street to the north, 34th Street to the south, 8th Avenue to the east, and the Hudson River to the west. In its early years, it was a notorious slum on Manhattan Island, mainly populated by Irish-born laborers. It was infamous for its poor living conditions, severe ethnic conflicts, and general disorder. Hell's Kitchen is not only a real place in New York, but also a significant location in both Marvel and DC universes. In Marvel, it is the home of Daredevil. DC's Gotham also mentions Hell's Kitchen, and Jessica Jones was born there. Additionally, other superheroes like Luke Cage and Iron Fist, who will form the Defenders Alliance, are also from Hell's Kitchen. They are street heroes who fight against gangsters in the area. How bad is it? Duke asked. Let's put it this way, Samir began. Hell's Kitchen is notorious for its serial murders and is described by all of New York as probably the most low-level, filthy district in the entire city. Drugs, prostitution, gambling, there's nothing they can't do. Okay, let's go there then, Duke said, a playful smile curling at the corner of his mouth. Huh? Samir was stunned. Diana was also puzzled. What are you going to do? She had originally thought that Duke wanted to attack the four big families. Was he addicted to robbery? After sitting on the train for a week, she had already noticed something was off with Duke. Can robbery be addictive? But now it seemed it wasn't what she thought. Duke was unaware of Diana's inner thoughts. If he knew, he would have been dumbfounded. He considered himself a positive person, someone who wouldn't resort to such actions. Even if he wanted to target the four major families, it would be through extortion, not outright robbery. And don't forget, he owed the system 17,038 talent points. He had to earn points to pay it back. Duke didn't answer Diana and continued to ask Samir, "Who controls Hell's Kitchen now?" Samir scratched his head. "I don't know about that. I didn't dare to ask. I just heard that the area is controlled by the #1 mafia in New York today, the Jumo family from Italy." Duke didn't blame him. After all, the mafia was known for its viciousness. For them, killing people was just a minor part of their daily routine. Samir was still an ordinary person, and it was reasonable for him not to provoke them. "Honey, don't you want to punish the evil and promote the good? Isn't it your belief to protect good human beings from harm?" Duke persuaded Diana. Diana hesitated. In truth, she had no idea how to survive in the human world and felt lost. Since she chose Duke, she followed him, letting him make the decisions. After killing Ares, she lost her target. If it wasn't for Duke, she would have chosen to recluse a long time ago. At the end of Wonder Woman, she left Samir and his party and walked into the crowd, signifying her choice to hide among people. After losing her boyfriend and completing her mission, she lost her goal in life. Unable to return to Paradise Island, she was completely confused about her future. Just like in Justice League, when Batman questioned Diana, Superman was once the guiding light of the world. He questioned Diana, who had been closed off for a century, asking what she had done for humanity. But now, her boyfriend was Duke, and he was not dead. After killing Ares, she had no direction in life and felt lost in the human world. So she chose to follow Duke. Duke subtly guided the heroine. "Don't you want to be Robin Hood?" he asked. "Robin Hood? Yes, I want to be Robin Hood." Diana's eyes sparkled with excitement. However, it was Doubtson Carlos who clapped his hands excitedly, almost jumping up and down as if he had been injected with adrenaline. Duke rolled his eyes. "Step aside. You can only be Robin Hood's follower." "Why?" Doubtson Carlos protested. "Because you haven't cracked the magic program I gave you," Duke replied, rolling his eyes again. You're bullying me," Doubtson Carlos said, her eyes welling up with tears. But Duke remained unmoved. He had already seen through her emotional tactics. Realizing her tears had no effect, she shot Duke a hard look and ran back to her room to continue studying the damned magic program. Watching her retreat, Duke felt a pang of regret. "Why did I have to open my big mouth?" he muttered to himself. Now, with all his talent points in the negative, he couldn't even go to the mall to buy magic items. It was a sad state of affairs. If Doubtson Carlos deciphered the magic formula, wouldn't she be able to produce something useful? No, he couldn't afford to lose face. He had to move to Hell's Kitchen as soon as possible. The place was crawling with villains, and after dealing with them, he could earn a lot of talent points. He estimated that after taking care of the troublesome Jumo family, he would definitely earn a significant amount of talent points. The points wouldn't be deducted instantly. He could choose to pay back the debt, save them temporarily, or buy some props. Drawing cards was out of the question for the next few years. When things settled down, he could consider it. Moreover, Mediv still had a lot of magic that Duke hadn't fully grasped yet. Learning a huge amount of magic in just 1 week was impossible. Some spells were even banned. His current strength was insufficient to read or understand them. Even if he managed to read them, he wouldn't be able to learn them, and he might even become obsessed. No, it was more like mana burn. If a mage wasn't careful, he could burn himself out, especially those who specialized in fire magic. They were like walking incendiary bombs, always at risk of turning themselves to ashes. "How is it, dear?" Duke asked Diana gently. Diana hesitated. "Don't overthink it. I know you're confused about the future, but sometimes we don't need to wait until we're fully prepared. Isn't the beauty of life in its infinite variables?" Duke patted her hand lightly. "Okay, let's go to Hell's Kitchen," Diana agreed. "Good. Samir, Go buy a 3-story house, Duke instructed. Understood, Samir replied. Now that they had money, a 3-story building was no big deal. At the same time, Robert Stark paced anxiously in his room, glancing at his son who was sleeping on the bed. His hair was nearly pulled out from the stress. End of this chapter. Chapter 52, Marvel's First Mage Tower Eternal Sleep. For 3 days, Robert Stark felt as if a century had passed. His once dark hair had turned half gray, and it seemed it would turn completely gray overnight. His genius son, who had always made him so proud, had been asleep for 3 days and had not woken up. It looked like normal sleep, but he just couldn't wake up. Numerous doctors came and went, all helpless. Slapping him and pricking him with acupuncture were useless, as if he couldn't feel the pain. Although his son looked like he was merely asleep, he didn't eat or drink and was getting weaker by the day. Sustained entirely by glucose, in less than 3 days, his once round cheeks had shriveled. "God, why are you torturing me like this?" Robert cried out, pulling out another handful of his hair, which was almost gone. The maid opened the door and walked in quickly. "Sir, Dr. Hughes is here." "What, Dr. Hughes is here?" Robert Stark stood up abruptly, a gleam of hope lighting up his gray eyes. Dr. Hughes was considered a miracle in the medical field. Since the birth of the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 1901, he had won the Nobel Prize for 3 consecutive years. This was an unbelievable feat to outsiders, who thought it was impossible without cheating, but insiders knew that Dr. Hughes relied on his real talents and knowledge. One of his 3 Nobel medals was for modern sleep medicine. Dr. Hughes was Robert Stark's last hope. "Quickly, please bring him in." "Yes, sir." "No, I'll go and invite him myself." A while later, Robert Stark held Dr. Hughes' hand tightly as they walked in. "Dr. Hughes, I will leave my son to you." "Mr. Stark, don't be impatient. I've heard about this. Don't worry, I will do my best." Thank you. Please go ahead." Dr. Hughes opened his toolbox, took out his medical equipment, and examined the boy carefully. About 10 minutes later, Robert Stark was sweating profusely, waiting impatiently as Dr. Hughes put away his equipment. "Dr. Hughes? It's not good. This is the most unbelievable patient I have ever encountered in my life." This sentence caused Robert Stark's heart to sink. Was there no hope? "Mr. Stark, there are 2 possibilities before you." "2 possibilities?" Robert Stark was shocked. The other doctors had all shaken their heads, unable to offer any solutions. But Dr. Hughes, a 3-time Nobel Prize winner, had 2 possibilities right away. What are the 2 possibilities? "Mr. Stark, have you ever heard of sleeping sickness?" "Sleeping sickness?" "Yes. 6 years ago, I traveled to Kazakhstan and treated a special patient. At that time, he slept for 5 days. 5 days? Robert Stark was startled. However, his situation was different from your son's. He would wake up for a period of time, but not more than an hour each day, and then continue to fall into a deep sleep. I spent a lot of energy to cure him, but although he woke up, he experienced symptoms such as drowsiness, amnesia, and hallucinations." Dr. Hughes shook his head regretfully. This was the most failed case in his life. He had treated countless patients, but only this case had failed. Although he succeeded in waking the person from a long-term slumber, the patient turned from sleeping to sleepy, frequently dozing off within a day and sleeping for a period of time after an hour or 2. Although it could be considered saving the person, as long-term sleep and dormancy could also lead to death, there was a sense of powerless frustration. Moreover, the patient also experienced symptoms such as memory loss and hallucinations. It was a heavy burden. Then my son has sleeping sickness? Robert Stark gritted his teeth. If there was no other way, he could only choose this. Although his genius son might become a useless person, it was better than eternal sleep. Amnesia is absolutely fatal to scientists. I can't be sure. Dr. Hughes shook his head. This is different from the symptoms I've encountered before. I need to carefully examine past cases before I can draw a final conclusion. Then, what about the second possibility? The second one. Mr. Stark, forgive me for asking, but have you offended anyone? Dr. Hughes suddenly asked in a low voice. Offended people? Robert Stark was taken aback for a moment, then smiled wryly. The Stark family started its fortune 50 years ago. In countless competitions, I don't know how many families and powers we've crossed. Today, I am not a good person, and the people I have offended in the past 50 years, how many hundreds or even thousands? You mean my enemy did it? A sternness flashed in Robert Stark's eyes. Someone poisoned him? No, no, no. Dr. Hughes quickly shook his head and waved his hands. It's not poisoning. I checked, and there is no sign of poisoning. Your son may have offended a mysterious force. Robert Stark was stunned. God, mysterious power? He was taken aback not because he was unaware, but because he knew very well. There are records in the family files, and his father had mentioned being helped by a mysterious power in his early years. It sounded like it should be a magician, but then they disappeared. Otherwise, the Stark family would have stood at the top of New York long ago. Now, not only do they have to contend with the Wayne and Kane families, but they also have to be wary of Osborne's machinations. Wait, did Osborne do it? No, that doesn't make sense. If they had that ability, they wouldn't have waited until now. Do you think that mysterious powers are common? At this stage, mysterious powers are all hidden. Unlike later generations, you might encounter them just walking down the street. Mr. Stark, did you remember anything? Oh no, nothing. Well, I'll go back and look up the information left over from ancient times. But if it's a mysterious power, I can't do anything, and you can only turn to those who are also mysterious powers. I see. Mary will see Dr. Hughes out for me. Mary was the maid from earlier. Okay, Dr. Hughes, this way, please. Thank you. After leaving Stark's mansion, Dr. Hughes looked around to ensure he wasn't being followed before hailing a taxi. Taxis existed in New York in 1907. Driver, take me to Hell's Kitchen. Ah, it's not safe there, sir, are you sure? The driver was taken aback. It was very dangerous there, and he didn't dare to go. Don't worry, just stop at the intersection of 8th Avenue and Tudor Street. That's fine. 8th Avenue is a very peculiar place. As a dividing line, the west side is hell and the east side is heaven. Although Hell's Kitchen is very chaotic, it still has its own set of order. They usually don't cross the boundary casually, so it is relatively safe there. It's a bit like the feeling of Kowloon Walled City. End of this chapter. Chapter 53, Marvel's First Mage Tower. At the very edge of Hell's Kitchen, there stood a small 3-story bungalow. Thank you, Dr. Hughes. This is your reward, Samir said with a smile, handing over a money bag. You're welcome. You're welcome. If you need me, just come to me, Dr. Hughes replied, quickly opening the bag. His heart sank when he saw only $5 inside. But you have to remember this matter. Don't worry, I will never say anything. Besides, I dare not provoke you, Samir assured him. That's good, please, Dr. Hughes said, nodding like a dog before leaving, his previous aura of a top doctor completely gone. Boss, I sent him away, Samir reported. Oh, I see, Diana said as she approached. I thought you were going to kill him. Why? You think too badly of me. Duke smiled, embracing her. I am a person with a clear sense of right and wrong. I will only kill those who have committed the most serious crimes. As long as there is even a trace of redemption, I will not take their lives. I hope so, Diana sighed. It wasn't that she had any resistance to Duke, but she had seen too many crimes in the past 3 days. She wanted to kill, but she was sticking to her creed. In Hell's Kitchen, she couldn't feel a trace of goodness. There was only evil and darkness. She had witnessed an old woman stabbing a little girl to death for a bite of food. She couldn't eradicate the darkness in this world. She could only protect kind human beings. But in Hell's Kitchen, she couldn't find a kind human being and didn't know who to protect. Perhaps this kind of kindness could only be found in children under the age of 6? Duke could feel Diana's anxiety, but he had nothing to offer. He had come to Hell's Kitchen just to earn his talent points. The most damning thing was that 3 days ago, on the first day of staying in Hell's Kitchen, the System Mother woke up and issued a mission for him. As a future Archmage, how could you not have your own Mage Tower? Work hard towards the Mage Tower. Mage Tower? Seriously? The system rarely issued tasks to him, and this time it wouldn't directly give Duke what he needed. How was he supposed to build that thing? Fortunately, the system provided drawings that could be understood by architects and workers at this stage. Plans, stereograms, perspectives, dimensions, proportions, labels, everything was included. Among the Mage Towers given by the system, such as Hogwarts, Tower of Eternity, Tower of Miracles, Fair and Floating Island, Dalaran, and Karajan. Duke chose Karajan. It made sense. He had inherited Medivh's magic, so why not get Karajan out? Then he received 100 A1 drawings from Karazhan. He couldn't understand them completely, but it didn't matter as long as the architect could. Additionally, he got a lot of core materials for the Mage Tower, such as Red Dragon Essence. A massive piece, 1 person tall and 3 people wide, almost crushed him to death. This super high-level magic essence could only be condensed after the death of an ancient red dragon. To build a tower, he first needed money, and secondly, a piece of land. Plus, he needed the power to, well, in America, all you really needed was money. Although he had robbed millions of dollars, he was still far from rich. Duke's first thought was to find a rich man. His first target was Tony. No, the Stark family. After all, he was more familiar with Iron Man than Batman. At least he knew Iron Man's father, but not Batman's dad, let alone Batman's grandpa. At this time, both families were headed by grandfathers. As for the grandfathers' situations, Duke knew nothing. Unfortunately, although the Stark family was very rich, he calculated that it wasn't enough to build a mage tower. It wasn't about the money, but the love. He hadn't been able to find a breakthrough point. The communication with Robert Stark was only once on the... Tamar's presence made the other party a bit wary. Just as he was about to turn his attention to the Wayne family, unexpected news provided him with a golden opportunity. Howard Stark, Iron Man's father, had fallen seriously ill. It wasn't a common illness. Once he fell asleep, he never woke up again. Duke keenly sensed that this might not be a mere disease. Transforming into a raven, he flew over to investigate. Sure enough, Howard Stark was entangled in a very evil magical energy. To be precise, it was black witchcraft. Eastern black witchcraft is quite similar to Western black magic. Duke perched at a distance by the window to investigate further. Dispelling the black witchcraft wasn't difficult for him, but it came with a price. Stark's money to build his 66-meter mage tower. Yes, 66 meters. Duke felt a pang of frustration. How long would it take to build such a tower? Fortunately, the system didn't impose a time limit. A 66-meter-high mage tower would require at least 10 hectares of land. Considering the main mage tower and an enchantment area surrounding it, he would need around 20 hectares of land. Factoring in the current prices, land sales, construction materials, and so on, the biggest investment would be in train transportation. All the stone materials for construction had to be mined and transported from the western mountains. Given the relatively weak carrying capacity of trains during this period and the long transportation time, it would take half a month to mine ore, load it, and transport a train to New York. A round trip for a train would take up to 20 days. At the current speed, it would take a week for the train to travel from the western mountains to New York. To ensure timely loading and transportation of ore, at least 5,000 mining workers would be needed in the western mountains. Once transported to New York, dozens of trucks and thousands of workers would be required to move a truckload of ore to the construction site. To avoid interruptions in the supply of stone materials, 4 trains would need to be transported simultaneously, with 3 trains running at any given time. The cost of chartering 3 trains and running them back and forth for at least half a year would be substantial. The number of miners in the western mountains, several construction teams on the site, and additional workers for odd jobs and logistics would total close to 10,000 people. The expenses for food and drink for these workers would be significant. Most of the money would be spent on ore mining, transportation, and labor. The costs for buying land and building the Mage Tower would be relatively minor in comparison. A rough estimate put the total cost at close to $100 million. Fortunately, this was the Marvel Earth, not the world of his previous life. The financial resources of the 4 major families were beyond the understanding of ordinary mortals. Otherwise, it would have been impossible to afford it. Was Howard Stark's life worth this investment? It was hard to say. It depended on how his father calculated the value. With a target in mind, Duke began his preparations. Samir discovered that the most renowned doctor in the area was Dr. Hughes. However, no one knew that Dr. Hughes had been poisoned because he couldn't master a particular medical skill. His consultation fees from previous years had already been lost, so when Samir approached him, they quickly reached an agreement and made a case for Robert Stark. During this time, Duke had no opportunity to punish evil and promote good. He had to focus on the design drawings for the Mage Tower. When the tower reached a certain height, he would need to inscribe the spell formula and bury the magic materials. The final placement of the Red Dragon Essence would combine the spells of the entire Mage Tower, activating and connecting them together. Additionally, he had to consider the defense and attack devices of the Mage Tower. He needed to mark a specific drawing, as he couldn't be present all the time. When the construction reached that particular part, the construction head would need to notify him. This made building such a structure quite troublesome. Currently, a RGE area of land in New York was vacant, offering plenty of options for the construction of the Mage Tower. After continuous comparisons, he finally set his sights on the area of Westchester. Wait, why does that name feel so familiar? End of this chapter. Chapter 54. Wicca the Elf. Oh, by the way, Duke remembered that Westchester is the hometown of the bald professor. Being neighbors with Professor X? Well, that could be interesting. Although the old man's academy often had troubles and various things were forcibly demolished, it was okay. The place Duke chose was still a long way from the Xavier School for Gifted Youth, and his spell enchantment was enough to resist that kind of collision. Well, I just don't know if Phoenix Girl is Famke Janssen or Sophie Turner. The former has a good temperament, while the latter is better in youth, with a more vibrant presence. Of course, Bald Chang hasn't been born yet. In fact, his father is still a child now. That house was still a mansion and hadn't been built into a college yet. Sometimes Duke always wondered if Professor X hijacked an alien spaceship. Why is the architectural style of the bottom layer so futuristic and advanced, while the outside looks completely like it's from the last century? 2 days later, Duke finally marked the key node positions on Karazhan's 100A1 design drawings. When it's time for construction, the construction head must be notified in time to repair that part. Boss, I got the invitation letter for Robert Stark's banquet. I think you will definitely use it. Samir walked up. In the 3-story small Western-style building, Duke and Diana lived on the top floor. Doubts and Carlos lived on the 2nd floor, and Samir stayed on the 1st floor. The room was still a bit big, but Duke didn't ask for a maid or someone to do the housework because there were better alternatives. Seeing the elf flying up and down in the room, Samir spat out a mouthful and became more determined to embark on the road of magic. It's amazing, isn't it? In the past few days, Samir felt like he was living in a fairy tale world. The inside and outside of the house were not in the same style at all. The fantasy wind inside the house was extremely strong, and outside the house, a dark hell. As soon as he went out, he was instantly brought back to the present world. Invitation letter? What is it? Duke raised his head and accepted the invitation letter. Help me pack up the drawings. Hey, while packing up the blueprints, Samir was full of surprises. He knew what this thing was, the 66-meter Mage Tower where he would live in the future. So excited, although the drawing looked big on his head. Invitation letter? Oh, it's really interesting. His son is dying, and Robert Stark still has time? Duke smiled and threw the invitation letter on the table. Wicca, help me with a cup of coffee. Cuckoo. Wicca is one of the pure element elves he summoned. There is only a Q version of the human form, no facial features, no male or female, and can't speak, only coo. Chirp. Kaka. Soon, the transparent little dumpling flew over holding a cup of coffee. Thanks, Wicca. Taking the cup, Duke smiled and stroked Wicca's little head like a puppy. Cuckoo. The little dumpling comfortably rubbed Duke's palm a few times, then circled around, flew away, and continued cleaning the room as if she was full of enthusiasm and didn't know she was tired. Although the elves couldn't speak, Duke could still feel their emotions. For example, Goo Goo was happy. Haw was puzzled and surprised. Kaka was angry. I'm so envious. When will I be able to summon an elf like Wicca? Samir packed up the blueprints and stood aside eagerly, looking at Wicca flying up and down. Although Wicca often called him Kaka and Kaka, he was not angry. On the contrary, he never tired of it. Even when Wicca threw something at him, he didn't dodge it. You have no hope in this life. Duke glanced at Samir, his loyalty already at 70%. Huh? Samir's face froze for a moment. There are more than thousands of kinds of magic in this world. The magic I want to pass on to you cannot summon elves. Duke shook his head. In fact, summoning elves was just one of the tens of thousands of low-level little magics that Medivh knew, but he was not going to growl. Medivh's full knowledge to Samir, inheritance to others. Ah! You have to think about it. The elf is just a small magic, and its practical effect is not great, Duke said. Then, forget it. Samir scratched his head in embarrassment. He was thrown another light ball by Wicca. This is Wicca's only bombardment method. The small light ball is just a 1-centimeter bead, which is neither painful nor itchy and has no lethality. It feels like being blown out by a bubble. Come on, there are still 10% left, and you can learn magic. Duke smiled, patted Samir on the shoulder, and walked downstairs. Boss, what is that 10%? Samir was a little confused. The boss always mentioned percentages. 10%, 20%, now 10 cent. But what exactly does this 10 cent mean? He didn't understand it at all. You guess. Samir was so frustrated he felt like he could vomit blood. He quickly chased after Duke. Boss, is there no crystal ball for that kind of test? To see which department I am suitable for. Read fewer of those fantasy novels. Reading too many will make you want to create wands. My magic inheritance does not need those messy methods. You can choose from the protection department, conjuration department, prophecy department, enchantment department, illusion, death, and transformation, Duke explained, shaking his head. Ah, but I haven't seen any of these before. Samir was speechless. What are these departments? That's why I asked you to think carefully in advance, Duke said. Okay, don't think so much. Go and clean up for me. I have to go to a banquet tonight. Understood, boss. Diane, are you going tonight? Duke called out. Not going. Okay, then. The heroine, Diana, was now in a period of confusion. In the past 2 days, she had often been seen playing the role of a thinker. Maybe she was contemplating the meaning of her existence? For this, Duke had nothing to guide her with. To be honest, he himself was still a university student and needed guidance from others. What he could offer Diana was merely experience in dealing with people in the workplace. When he came to this strange world, he didn't even know how to live. And let me help you. Please help me. While he was guiding Diana, wasn't she subtly guiding him as well? For Diana's confusion, he was indeed a little helpless. She needed to figure it out on her own. What others say or persuade is of no use. After dark, at the Stark mansion. Boss, this way please. I can't go inside. I'll wait for you in the outer hall, Samir said. Well, pay attention to various news, Duke ordered, and then walked towards the inner hall. Thank you to the following supporters. Shuyo, 29272521 8月月5云秀6分青年 ID 克斯日天 Vuberward 我是天鬼飞度云霄 Duord Hongten 新之助 MMM 1M1Berward 小丑依云 Kevin New Stickslick Shuyo 2E7030919 no sick do for reward. 解除安全模式 Kachates Ka Money is not in the amount, but in the support. Thank you. End of this chapter. Chapter 55. You know nothing about power. At high-level banquets like this, servants are not allowed to enter the inner hall. They can only stay in the outer hall. However, don't underestimate the outer hall. Valuable information and news can often be obtained there. After Duke entered the inner hall, he didn't rush to find Robert Stark. Instead, he went straight to the dining table, grabbed some food, ordered a glass of wine, and retreated to a corner. Apart from Robert Stark, he didn't know anyone there. The person holding Robert's arm seemed to be his wife. The banquet was tedious, filled with all kinds of chatter. Duke finally understood why Robert Stark held the banquet at this time, to create the false impression that his son is awake. Although Duke didn't know the exact reason, it seemed to be a routine tactic. From a distance, Duke raised his wineglass to signal Robert Stark. When Robert noticed him, His expression changed dramatically. Leaving his wife and guests behind, he hurried over. To Duke, Robert appeared flustered, but to the other guests, they were left wondering who Duke was to warrant such attention from Robert. "Why are you here?" Robert asked in a low voice. "I don't remember inviting you." "But I did come in through an invitation letter," Duke replied with a laugh. "What exactly do you want to do?" Robert demanded. "Hey, hey, hey! When we were on the boat, didn't we have a good chat? How come we haven't seen each other for a month, and now you're acting like this?" Duke continued to laugh. "You." Robert's expression had changed drastically because he recognized Duke. He had sent a telegram to General Wilson in England, but the response was that there was no such person. The person in charge of the certificate was a man named Steve Trevor, who had already returned to the United States to report on his work. Originally, Robert thought the matter was over, but then General Wilson sent him another courier directly from London to New York. Robert had only recently received it. The package contained a photocopy of a photo taken by an old photographer in the small town of Feld. Although it wasn't the original, the clarity was about 80%. Upon seeing the photocopied photo, Robert was dumbfounded, not because of Duke, but because he saw Wolverine Logan. Memories from 30 years ago resurfaced. He had met Logan when he was about 10 years old, and Logan's appearance hadn't changed at all. Logan must be part of some mysterious force. Robert had seen Logan kill a woman with bone claws. In the photo, Duke stood in the middle, next to a woman. Ignoring the woman, Robert realized Duke was definitely not an ordinary person. Remembering that Duke had mentioned his son Howard, Robert was even more shocked. He began to suspect that Duke had come for his son and for him. So many coincidences couldn't just be coincidences. Therefore, the moment he saw Duke, Robert identified him as the murderer. He thought Duke was there to extort money. "Tell me, what conditions do you need to make my son wake up?" Robert asked fiercely, lowering his voice. "I can only say I'm sorry. Your son's coma has nothing to do with me," Duke replied, shaking his head and drinking his wine. "You!" Robert gritted his teeth angrily. "Although it has nothing to do with me, I can save him," Duke said with a smile, slowly putting down his empty wineglass. "Are you threatening me?" Robert whispered, gritting his teeth. "Mr. Stark, don't you think this isn't the place to talk?" "You'd better not try to threaten me," Robert continued. "Otherwise, I will use all my power to destroy you. Don't doubt it. I have that power." "You know nothing about power," Duke said with an expression of extreme contempt. Robert Stark stood up, his face flushed with anger. "You," he began, but Duke had already turned and was heading upstairs. Robert hesitated for a moment before quickly following. "Where are you going?" he demanded. "To your son Howard's room," Duke replied without looking back. "What the hell are you doing?" Robert questioned in a low voice, then shouted downstairs, "Catherine, entertain the guests for me." Without waiting for his wife to respond, he hurried after Duke. When they reached Howard's room, Duke shook his head as he looked at the boy's shriveled cheeks. "It's a pity that he has lost so much weight," he murmured. Robert's eyes narrowed. "Tell me, what do you need to?" Duke waved his hand dismissively. "As I said, I had nothing to do with what happened to your son. If you don't believe me, there's nothing I can do. You can check the records of my entry and hotel stay. I checked into a New York hotel 5 days ago." Robert sneered. "Really? It just so happens that my son fell into a coma 5 days ago." Duke frowned, realizing the coincidence. "There's nothing you can do if you don't believe me, but I still say the same thing. You know nothing about power." As he spoke, Duke extended his finger and tapped Howard's forehead. A wisp of black glow emerged and flew out of the window, forming a black line connected to Howard's forehead. What is this?" Robert asked, his mouth agape in surprise. "A kind of black witchcraft. I'll explain later, Mr. Stark. Are you sure you want to let this thread continue to spread?" Duke asked. "What do you mean?" Robert demanded. "This black line is connected to the black wizard who attacked your son. When the line reaches him, he will realize he has been discovered. At that point, he may risk your son's life," Duke explained. "What? Hurry up! Stop it! Stop it!" Robert yelled, frantically trying to grab and cut the black thread, but his efforts were in vain. How the hell are you going to make it stop? He suspected it was just a trick, but he couldn't take the risk. Even a 1% chance of it being true was too much to gamble with his son's life. "Now can we talk?" Duke asked calmly. "Talk, talk, talk now," Robert exclaimed. Duke smiled and pointed his index finger again. The black thread retracted and disappeared back into Howard's forehead. Robert collapsed onto the sofa, exhausted. "Huh," he sighed deeply, feeling utterly drained. End of this chapter. Chapter 56, Releasing the Curse. "What?" Robert Stark leapt off the sofa after hearing the conditions. 20 hectares of land and a 66-meter-high mage's tower? Are you out of your mind? The cost would be astronomical, likely running into hundreds of millions of dollars. While the land itself might not be too expensive, the building materials were another story. Duke's specifications required materials from the Western Mountains, which, although not inherently valuable, would be needed in large quantities. The logistics of transporting these materials, combined with the cost of feeding and housing nearly 1,000 workers, would require at least 3 trainloads. Despite signs of an impending economic crisis, it wasn't severe enough to significantly reduce prices or wages. The United States experienced an economic crisis in 1920 to 1921. Constructing the Mage Tower would necessitate at least 5 construction teams. Crucially, Duke insisted on paying Chinese workers the same wages as American workers, which was a significant departure from Robert's initial plan to use cheaper Chinese labor. To put it in perspective, if local American workers earned $1 a day, an economic downturn might reduce that to 70 cents. With some negotiation, it could drop to 50 or 60 cents. Even then, it would still be twice as expensive as hiring Chinese workers. Given these circumstances, employing Chinese laborers was not cost-effective. It's only close to $10 million at most. Is the money more important than your son's life? Duke said calmly. If we reach an agreement, I can help you catch the murderer right now and wake your son. Robert Stark was silent. Have you made up your mind? Of course, you can try to find someone else, but can they help you? And do you have the time? Duke pointed at Howard's pale, weakened face. This has gone beyond a normal coma, and the rate of deterioration is alarming. Robert Stark remained silent. You have 1 hour to decide. After that, I'll leave, and it will be useless to beg me then, Duke said, leaning back on the sofa. To be honest, I don't have to cooperate with you. I can approach the Wayne and Kane families. They are wealthier. And if all else fails, there's always the Osborne family. Mentioning Wayne and Kane didn't faze Robert Stark, but the name Osborne made him shudder. Although not outright enemies, the Starks and Osbornes were fierce business rivals. If the Osborne family gained Duke's support, it wouldn't be long before the Stark family was wiped out. Wait a minute, is that possible? Robert Stark suddenly considered a new possibility and laughed. The Stark family is willing to cooperate with you, and I will personally help you build this magnificent mage tower, but I have one condition. It seems we have an agreement. I'll help you catch the murderer, Duke said, standing up. Hey, wait, I haven't finished talking yet, Robert Stark said anxiously. You seem to have forgotten, Mr. Stark. Only I can set conditions, and you cannot. Besides, you have no real understanding of power, Duke said, glancing at Robert Stark before ignoring him. He waved his hand lightly, and a white light curtain appeared out of nowhere, with a bright center and a blurred halo around it. Robert Stark was shocked to see a very special room in the center of the light curtain. Then, Duke stepped into it and disappeared without a trace. Hey! Robert Stark reached out, wanting to grab Duke or jump in himself, feeling utterly lost. Is this power? Do I really know nothing about power? In the next second, he heard a cacophony of sounds. Ping-pong, boom-clang, bang-bang, swish, coming from inside the light curtain. Just as he was about to move, Duke leaned in closer to see what was happening inside. Suddenly, he jumped out, grabbing a man in a black robe and almost kicking him away. As Duke retreated, the magical light curtain vanished. Boom! Tell me, who sent you to harm him? Duke demanded, casually throwing the black-robed man to the cromeyes, round and pointing at the unconscious Howard on the bed. You, cough, cuff, who are you? You actually destroyed my magic cultivation. The black-robed man's face was full of pain, his sense of magic completely gone, a lifetime of hard work now lost. It was utterly humiliating. It's black magic. Well, Actually, black magic and black witchcraft are hard to distinguish without further subdivision. This person has no cultivation base now. He's useless, Duke mused. Robert Stark suddenly stiffened, stepped forward, and delivered a powerful kick. Damn it! You dare to harm my son! Tell me, why did you do it? My patience is very limited. Don't make me skin you alive. Speak! The black-robed man, surprisingly composed, sat up from the ground, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and spat out a broken tooth. The famous Robert Stark, I have no grudge against you. He glanced at Duke with a sorrowful expression. I've met my match today. Fine, I'll tell you. It was Jumeau who asked me to harm your son. I don't know anything else. Go ahead, kill me now. Jumeau, the mafia boss in Hell's Kitchen? How could he be involved? Robert Stark exclaimed. Want to die? It's not that easy, Adams. Robert shouted as the door was pushed open vigorously. Duke glanced over and saw the burly head of the bodyguard he had seen on the boat before. Lock him up in the basement. I want him to suffer, Robert ordered. Don't worry, boss, I'll take good care of him, Adams replied, grabbing the black-robed man and lifting him like a chicken. You disabled my magic. Kamataj will not let you go. You will face endless pursuit from magicians. The black-robed man threatened as he was dragged away. Duke smiled. Oh, when did Gu Yi allow you to do such harmful work in private? If she knows I killed you, she might even thank me. The black-robed man turned pale with shock. He had only intended to scare Duke, but he hadn't expected Duke to know about the supreme mage Gu Yi. Mr. Duke? Robert Stark interrupted, uninterested in Gu Yi. He just wanted his son to wake up. Relax, it's not difficult, Duke assured him. He turned around and lightly swept his hand over Howard's forehead, a lavender halo lighting up on his hand. Release the curse, Duke commanded. The black magic was actually a kind of curse. In the next second, a ferocious skull made of black smoke emerged from Howard Stark's forehead. The skull cried and wailed, its expression ferocious and distorted, staring at Robert Stark with soul-piercing hollow eyes. Robert felt a chill run down his spine, as if death's scythe was on his neck, cold sweat pouring down his back. But it was just a pretense. After struggling for a second, the skull was vaporized and purified. Mr. Duke, is my son okay? Robert Stark asked anxiously. Before Duke could respond, Howard groaned and slowly opened his eyes. Son, Robert exclaimed, rushing to his side. Father, Howard replied weakly. End of this chapter. Chapter 57. My life has no regrets. Stinky old man, are you trying to kill me? Howard Stark kicked his father out of the bed with a surprising burst of strength. After the kick, he collapsed back onto the bed, exhausted. Why am I so weak? I don't have any strength. What is this needle doing in my arm? Howard noticed the glucose bottle beside the bed and was still in a daze. Duke couldn't help but chuckle. He never imagined that the famous founder of Esildmer would have such a silly and cute phase. Robert Stark got up from the floor, his face drenched in sweat. He had been too excited and had almost crushed his son in his enthusiasm. You unlucky boy, you've been in a coma for 5 days and 5 nights, Robert scolded. He then turned and shouted, Mary, have the kitchen prepare some milk and food. The Westerners have a peculiar way of dealing with hunger. Instead of porridge, they go straight for a plate of beef. 5 days? No wonder. Wow, what's wrong with my face? I look like a vampire. Howard was startled when he saw his reflection in a nearby mirror. Duke stood aside, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Howard was quite amusing as a child. Who is this? Howard asked, noticing Duke for the first time. This is your Uncle Duke. He saved you with magic. You were cursed by black magic, you know? Robert reprimanded. During this time, you are not allowed to go out without my permission. Have you heard? What the hell? How did I get an uncle after sleeping for 5 days? But it doesn't matter. Magic? Little Howard's eyes lit up immediately. Uncle Duke, I had a dream, a very long one, in a magnificent temple. There were many strange and powerful people talking to me. It was all a mess, but I remember an emblem of an eagle with outspread wings. An eagle with outspread wings? No way. Duke frowned. Could Howard have dreamed of the Holy Shield Brotherhood? Is that even possible? It's like a temple dedicated to enlightening and guiding humanity, unlocking natural instincts. Duke didn't know much about the Holy Shield Brotherhood, only that it was founded by an ancient Egyptian named Imhotep, who led the resistance against an alien Zerg invasion 600 years ago. At that time, Apocalypse was merely Imhotep's subordinate. Yes, the same Apocalypse from X-Men Apocalypse, one of the oldest mutants in existence. So, little Howard received enlightenment from the Brotherhood of the Holy Light early on? In other words, S-Shield could be considered a branch of the Holy Shield Brotherhood, given the similarity between a shield's eagle logo and the eagle embossed on Imhotep's shield. Howard's future achievements were indeed impressive, rivaling those of historical figures like Zhang Heng, Tesla, Newton, Da Vinci, and Galileo. "This is an opportunity for you. Make the most of it," Duke said, smiling as he patted little Howard's head. He felt immensely satisfied being called uncle by the future boss of S-Shield. "I will." Little Howard nodded, still not fully understanding what had happened. After eating, he quickly fell into a deep sleep again. "Mr. Duke, what were you talking about? Is there a problem with the dream?" Robert Stark asked curiously as he led Duke towards the living room. "You don't need to know the details. Just understand that Howard has been blessed in disguise this time. Whether he can seize this opportunity depends on his own abilities," Duke replied. "All right, let's discuss the Mage Tower construction plan," Duke said, extending his hand. A small vortex appeared, and Robert Stark watched in horror as Duke's hand disappeared into it, leaving only his upper arm visible. Curious, Robert waved his hand behind the vortex but felt no resistance. Had Duke's hand really vanished? "What are you doing?" Duke asked. "Nothing," Robert replied awkwardly, scratching his head as he sat back down. Duke retrieved a set of design drawings from the vortex and placed them on Robert's desk. "Space bag," he explained, "opens up a portable, independent small space for oring, and retrieving objects." Robert was momentarily dazed by the convenience of it all. He quickly flipped through the A1 design drawings, marveling at their complexity and scale. Although he wasn't an expert, his experience in real estate gave him some familiarity with design plans. These were intricate, detailed, and enormous. What was Duke planning to build? This wasn't just a tower. It was a war tower capable of launching shock waves. Taking a deep breath, Robert realized the enormity of the task. "All right, I'll take this job. Since I said I would, I'll do it. It will take about a month to prepare," he promised, patting his chest. "I'm not in a hurry, and you don't need to call me Mister. Just call me Duke," Duke replied. Robert was overjoyed. Dropping the formal title meant their relationship had become much closer, at least on the surface. That was a significant step. "Then, about my future?" Robert hesitated. Duke understood his concern and waved his hand dismissively. "You have no chance in this life. Everyone has their own destiny. Your son, Howard Jr., has been chosen by a mysterious power. His future will be extraordinary. Focus on raising your son. I can only guarantee that as long as I'm here, the Stark family will not be destroyed." Robert sighed, accepting the reality. "As for your descendants, it depends on their fate with me," Duke added, standing up. "You don't need to worry about Jumeau. I'll handle him myself." "All right," Robert agreed. "That's it. Please open the window," Duke requested. "What?" Robert was momentarily confused but complied. His eyes widened as he saw Duke transform into a black crow and fly out with a caw. The sound seemed to mock him. "Fool, fool, fool." Robert slumped back onto the sofa, realizing the crow looked familiar. "Isn't that the crow that flew past my son's window 2 days ago?" He muttered to himself. I have no regrets in my life. I think of running under the sunset that day. That is my lost youth." Farewell of this chapter. Chapter 58. Stay in Karajan. Time flies, and it has been 2 years since Duke came to New York. Through his efforts, Hell's Kitchen transformed into Heaven's Kitchen. The Mafia family leader, Jumeau, has been dead for 1.5 years. Duke didn't rush to kill Jumeau. Instead, he let him live in panic and fear for a while. Over these 2 years, Duke drastically reformed Hell's Kitchen, eradicating much of its criminal atmosphere. However, despite the name change to Heaven's Kitchen, shadows of its dark past still linger. Darkness can never be completely eradicated. "Boss, I've mastered the sunshine shot." Samir burst into the room excitedly. He noticed the window was open and immediately demonstrated his new skill. Boom! A violent golden sunburst erupted, dazzlingly bright. "Very good, but you scared Wicca," Duke said with a kind smile. "What?" Samir, still excited about his new gun magic, was stunned. He quickly ran downstairs, but it was too late. A large water droplet hit his head from behind, soaking him completely. I said, "Wicca, I've fed you plenty of bullets," Samir said, feeling aggrieved. "Humph," Wicca responded arrogantly and coldly. She had a dual personality, tender as water at times, and fiery with passion at others. Then, "I'll go down first, boss," Samir said, shaking his wet hair and hurrying towards the stairs. 2 years had passed. 3 months ago, Samir achieved a loyalty level of 90% and received the inheritance of magic as he wished. Now, his loyalty stood at 92%. After reaching 90%, loyalty would not decrease, only increase. However, this was somewhat meaningless. At 100% loyalty, one could sacrifice for Duke without hesitation, but Duke didn't need this level of devotion. Samir received his inheritance from the Fairy Tale Guild, specifically the magic of the A-rank mage Arzak Khanal, who used bullet magic to fill guns with magic bullets, also known as gun magic. Samir, already skilled with guns, found this magic fitting. His current attire resembled that of a sniper from Van Helsing in Uncle Wolf. Fur coats, Western cowboy hats, exuding a cowboy style. However, instead of a crossbow, Samir had several guns hanging around his waist and under his fur coat. Magic bullets involve charging guns with magic bullets and attacking with different types of bullets. For example, spark shot produced electric shocks, though Duke found the name misleading and thought it should be renamed to reflect fire bullets. The sunshine shot, Samir demonstrated fired flash bullets to blind enemies. Other types included twister shot, which created a giant tornado, bursting shot, which fired bullets in rapid succession, and full shot, which surrounded the target with guns and fired all the shells. Of course, Samir didn't have all the bullet magic at his disposal, and different magic required different guns, hence the variety of guns he carried. For instance, full shooting required a cannon barrel, which he didn't have. However, once fully familiar with and mastering gun magic, these limitations could be broken. For example, using a pistol to fire all the shells. As for the bullets he fed Wicca, it was part of his practice with bullet magic. Wicca's characteristic was devouring magic, which allowed her to grow. Simply put, Wicca the elf could grow by consuming magic. Today, 2 years later, Wicca was no longer the Q version of a dumpling, but had grown into a big beauty. Although she still lacked facial features, her figure was becoming increasingly sexy. Her growth was under Duke's intervention and control. If Duke wanted her to grow into a different shape, she would comply. The current state of affairs is disastrous for the country and its people. Wait a moment. Ah, boss, is there anything else? Samir quickly stopped and turned around to ask. Get ready to pack up, we're moving today. Moving? Really? Samir jumped up with excitement upon hearing the news. Are we going to live in Karazhan? He was thrilled. Even though he didn't fully understand why, the Mage Tower was named Karazhan. Yes, the boss confirmed. That's great. I guess the lady boss will be very happy. I'll go and prepare right away. Samir sprinted out while talking. He could magically step on the air and move quickly. After 2 years, the Mage Tower was finally completed. He had visited it half a month ago, and the construction was progressing rapidly. Only a few corners remained to be finished. Once the trash was cleared, this magnificent tower could be declared complete. Overall, it retained the gray-black style of the original Karazhan, simple, solemn, and calm. Although newly built, it gave off a sense of ancient history, as if it were a product of hundreds of years ago. The stone structures were made from rocks sourced from the western mountains. The exterior was an exact replica of Karazhan, but there were some changes inside. The appearance was a copy of the game version, while the internal structure was similar, but with some differences. For a more accurate reference, one could look at the Karazhan depicted in the Warcraft movie. In the game, Karazhan was broken. After the explosion of Medivh's magic power, many areas were destroyed, and later it was further damaged and altered by a demon invasion. The stables, banquet hall, opera house, and other areas on the bottom floor still existed, but had changed significantly. The stables, for instance, had become a cemetery for the victims when the Stormwind Guards attacked Karazhan. Due to the unique nature of Karazhan, the souls of dead soldiers couldn't leave and ended up gathering in the stables to watch the gate. Duke's Karazhan, however, was not set in the Middle Ages, where horses would be necessary, so there was no need for a stable. It had been converted into a beast stable. He had an idea for it, but it couldn't be realized just yet. It would have to wait. Just after the group moved into Karazhan, the long-lost system popped up again. Host, your magic power has reached saturation. It's time to advance to the legendary realm. Please ensure you handle any necessary affairs and responsibilities in the human world. Duke was immediately excited. Was he finally going to step into the realm of legend? But wait, what did it mean by handling affairs and responsibilities? End of this chapter. Chapter 59, Roaming in the Star Realm. Wait, what do you mean by clearing up the aftermath and explaining? Duke asked, bewildered. It may take several years for the host to advance. The exact duration depends on the host's own talent. What? Duke's mouth fell open. Several years? What the hell? From the sound of it, it could be decades, maybe even longer. Shouldn't Tony Stark become Iron Man after waking up? Okay, can't I just not advance? He wasn't mentally prepared for this sudden advancement and felt a bit panicked. This is impossible, host. The magic power can only grow and not decline, unless the host can consume all the magic power. But this would only delay the advancement temporarily. Duke was conflicted. He considered going somewhere secluded to release a few large spells, emptying his magic power to halt the advancement. But this would only be a temporary solution, as the magic would naturally restore itself. Given his strength, it would only take half a month for his magic to grow back. Should he continue to release it? To deal with the countless future troubles and dangers, he must advance. This was unavoidable. The perfect strength at the peak of the hero level was insufficient to handle future intruders who would be legendary and demigod. Okay then, how long will it take to advance to the legendary realm? He was still a bit panicked. The host can refer to the supreme mage Gu Yai. It took her nearly 100 years to advance from an apprentice to a demigod, and now 400 years have passed and she is still in the realm of demigod strength. Damn, it's been 400 years and she hasn't advanced from a demigod to a main god. Then, what about advancing to the legendary realm? The host can refer to Medivh, the star mage of Azeroth. It took him 5 years to step from a hero to a legend. He roamed countless star realms and finally found his own method of advancement. 5 years? Duke was dumbfounded. Medivh was a super magic genius who hadn't been seen in 500 years, and it took him 5 years to advance to legend. Duke felt that he couldn't advance in 50 years. He didn't think his talent was better than Medivh's. Don't forget, Medivh inherited most of the Guardian's power from his mother, the strongest guardian Egwene, at birth, and his body also housed the demon king Sargeras. With the support of these two big bosses, it still took him 5 years to step from a hero to a legend. Duke felt hopeless. Then, how do I upgrade? He didn't understand this at all. He knew how to cultivate magic power, but he didn't know how to advance. After all, he had been cheating his way through life, possessing late-stage hero strength from the start, and had never experienced advanced tempering. The host's spiritual power will enter the astral world to roam, but the body will stay in the original world. Wait, enter the astral world? Duke trembled in fright. He had entered the star world before. The astral world probably meant plane, but not in the general sense. It was very complicated. Let's put it this way. The mirror space of Master Marvel was also a kind of star world. Additionally, the dream was also a kind of astral world. For Medivh, his astral world was many-dimensional spaces connected to Azeroth. As for Gu Yi, she often traveled to the universe and multiple dimensions to explore the world and increase her cultivation. In short, the advancement of these two people's realms was achieved by wandering in various planes, dimensions, and multidimensional spaces. So it wasn't that the system was deliberately tormenting Duke. Moreover, both Medivh and Gu Yi roamed physically and mentally, traveling through these realms. Medivh is protected by two top-tier bosses, allowing him to physically roam the astral world despite his relatively low strength. As for Gu Yi, Duke doesn't know much about him. However, Duke's situation is different from both of them. His body remains in the original world, while only his spirit enters the astral world to travel. Unlike his previous experiences where he entered the star realm physically, this time, only his spirit will venture forth. This separation of spirit and body is a method he is somewhat familiar with, but it comes with significant risks. The spirit is extremely fragile, and if he encounters danger in the astral world and is scattered by a powerful enemy, he could become a vegetable or even die. Host, don't worry. During this period in the astral world, your spirit is immortal and no one can kill you. However, this system can only guarantee your safety to a certain extent, the system reassured him. Damn, immortal, huh? But what if someone traps me? Wouldn't that be a complete disaster? Duke rolled his eyes, feeling uneasy. Don't worry, if you encounter an invincible opponent, you can call upon this system. However, in such a case, your spirit will return to your body, which means the advancement will fail, the system explained. What happens if I fail to advance? Duke inquired. It's just a failure. If you want to advance, you'll have to roam the astral world again, but it will take some time before you can enter again, the system replied. That's manageable, Duke sighed in relief. What about my body in the original world? How can I ensure its safety? Karajan will activate its highest defense mechanism. Only those with your permission can enter and exit. Additionally, your room will have a second defense mechanism. Anyone harmful to you will be instantly exiled from Karazhan, the system assured him. What? Does this mean the system is worried that the heroine might harm me? No way. The heroine is a positive character, but it's always good to be cautious. At this point, Duke finally understood why the system had asked him to build the Mage Tower. It was to provide him with an absolutely safe place. Staying in a hotel or inn would be too dangerous. The way to advance is similar to that of cultivation, though slightly different. The path leads to the same goal. Countless magicians have died from mana burning and magic backlash during the advancement process, making it extremely dangerous. But Duke is different. He has the system, and he only needs to sleep and wake up. However, the duration of this sleep is uncertain. It could be a few days, years, or even decades. The higher the promotion, the longer it takes. Although he is 100% successful, with no risk of magic backlash or mana burning, his success in the advanced stage still depends on his talent, opportunity, and comprehension. Additionally, the system only requires talent points for upgrades. It has been upgraded within 2 years, although after the upgrade, Duke didn't feel any significant changes. Wait a minute, what if I'm attacked by an enemy? What if Karazhan is breached and the enemy reaches me? What should I do? Duke asked, concerned. That's impossible. Karazhan's full attack can kill a demigod, the system responded confidently. Damn, is it really that powerful? Duke was skeptical. Please answer positively. If that happens, you will wake up, but the promotion will be interrupted. However, such a scenario is highly unlikely, the system reassured him. Okay, I understand, Duke said, running his fingers through his hair, his face full of distress. If he sleeps for several years, will the heroine remain faithful? Don't worry, host. Your body will still be in the original world, the system added. Wait, what does that mean? Duke pondered. An indescribable image flashed through his mind. End of this chapter. Chapter 60, The Disappearance of Karazhan. P.S. I updated a chapter with over 3,000 words today. The full-level players in the old book Pirates have finished writing just today. I am a little emotional. Although the old book is very popular and there are not many subscriptions, it is always I feel a little bit sad in my heart. You will not understand the melancholy feeling of finishing a book as if you have lost something. Thank you to the readers who have supported me along the way. Starting tomorrow, 3 chapters will be updated from time to time. What? You're going to advance? Diana was a little dazed when she heard the news suddenly. Going to sleep? Yes. My advancement is not the same as others. To put it simply, I just need to sleep. It's just that the spirit and body will be separated. The body will stay in the original world, and the spirit will travel in the star realms of the primordial world. When will I wake up and succeed in advancing? This is not certain. It may take more than 10 years, Duke explained, his voice becoming softer. Diana was also a little confused. She was used to having Duke by her side when she was sleeping. Suddenly wanting to sleep separately for more than 10 years. This was hard to accept. No way. I have to advance. This is something I can't avoid. Duke shook his head. This was no surprise. If you look at martial arts novels, those masters often retreat for a year or two to reach a higher realm. Here, Duke took out a jade token and handed it to Diana's palm. What is this? Diana turned it over and saw that it was just a piece of ordinary jade. If you had to say it, this was a piece of valuable Hedian jade seed material with yellow skin. Both sides were smooth, with nothing carved, just some strange magical runes flickering on and off. This is a star boundary beacon. Star boundary beacon? Yes, with it, I can accurately find you in many star realms. When you sleep, just put it on the bedside, and you can talk to me in your dreams. So don't worry, I haven't left. Of course, it's impossible to come to you every night, so don't worry about my safety if you don't see me, Duke said. Call. If this was the case, Diana could accept it. At least she could see and talk to him, so she wouldn't be completely lonely, even if it was in a dream. If you're lonely, you can come by yourself. Of course, don't squeeze me too hard, and occasionally feed me some ginseng and maca to soak in water. Duke suddenly approached and said with a smirk. Diana didn't realize it at first, but when she saw Duke's mischievous expression, she immediately understood and gave him a fierce look. What time is it? And you're still talking nonsense. But she added in her heart, I will come by myself. Then, do you have anything else to say? Diana was just stunned for a while, but soon got used to it. It's okay, isn't it also isolated from the world when you are on Paradise Island? No more. Pay attention to safety. Although there are not many people who can hurt you now, be careful. As for the years I am advancing, you can experience life in the human world. You don't necessarily have to be a superhero all the time. By the way, this is for you. Duke took out a white jade mask. What is this? Magic mask. Your lifespan is very, very long. 100 years is enough time for humans to change from babes to ashes buried in the soil, and you will have no changes. So, if you want to live in the human world, remember to change your appearance. It can? Yes, it can change your age as you think about it, and it can completely change your appearance, Duke said. The original plan was for Diana to wander around the world from London, living in another city every 10 years, so she didn't need to change her appearance. But now, she had settled in New York, so this was necessary. Not only for Diana, but he also prepared masks for Duchen, Carlos, and Samir. Thanks. Diana nodded and took the mask. Duke had thought of everything. By the way, where is Carlos? Duke asked, avoiding the use of Duchen as it reminded him too much of his sister. In the martial arts arena, getting familiar with the magic shoes you gave her. I bet she's covered in bruises again, Diana replied, her previous melancholy lifting at the thought of Carlos. Carlos often found himself in amusing predicaments due to those shoes. Duke shook his head with a wry smile. Over the past 2 years, he had diligently worked to repay the more than 7,000 points he owed to the system. Not only had he cleared his debt, but he had also managed to exchange for a magical item for Doubtson Carlos, a pair of leather shoes. That's 251 armor, plus 178 dexterity, plus 68 stamina, 178 intelligence, plus 46. Mastery, 82, acceleration. Equipment acquired skill. Shadow Step. Instantly move up to 50 meters away with a 30-second cooldown. Attempts to move in shadow and appear behind your target, increasing movement speed by 70% for 3 seconds and boosting the damage of your next attack by 20%. The 20% damage bonus might seem vague, but essentially, if a sword could originally cut 10 centimeters, now it could cut 12. The 70% speed bonus was also significant. Doubtson Carlos had effectively become a thief, a combat thief wielding 2 swords. Although Shadow Step was typically a skill for thieves using daggers, it still worked for her. However, this was not the original orange equipment at level 101. Its attributes had been reduced tenfold, making it more akin to blue equipment. If it were true orange gear, Duke couldn't afford it even with his talent points. Besides, Doubtson Carlos wasn't as close to him as Diana, so a blue outfit was generous enough. The orange gear was naturally reserved for Diana, though she didn't seem to need much. Let's go see her, Duke suggested. As soon as they arrived at the martial arts arena, they saw Doubtson Carlos stumble out of the shadow and crash into a nearby pillar. Duke winced, imagining the bruises she must have. Are you okay? He asked, concerned. The shoes not only provided the Shadow Step, but also an acceleration of plus 82. This made her feel as light as a feather, which could be disorienting. Her attack, reaction, vision, and speed were all accelerated, making normal walking fine but causing chaos in battle. "I'm fine, really," Carlos replied, her expression embarrassed as she saw Duke. "That's good, but take it easy," Duke advised. Carlos opened her mouth, stunned for a moment, before saying, all right, you don't have to worry about me. What you should really worry about is Diana. Be careful. She might—" "I'll tear your mouth out," Diana interrupted, leaping forward. The two women tumbled over each other, laughing. That evening, Samir returned, still living between the realms of hell and the kitchen of heaven. "What? The boss wants to retreat for more than 10 years? Samir was shocked. Advancing in magic took that long? But wasn't this also a sign that practicing magic could extend one's lifespan? "Don't worry, Diana will explain everything to you," Duke said, raising his hand to write a magic rune on Samir's forehead. "What's this?" Samir asked, puzzled. "Diana isn't my main concern. I'm more worried about you and Carlos. You two aren't strong enough yet. If you're in danger, I can't always be there to help. But don't worry, if you die, your souls will return to Karazhan, just like before, only as soul bodies," Duke explained with a smirk. Samir had barely reached elite strength and was still quite weak. As for Dots and Carlos, with the bonus from Shadow Satyr's step, she had just about reached the elite level. Samir, who had not yet reached hero-level strength, looked puzzled. "Ah, boss, what exactly is a soul body?" Duke pointed to the elf Wicca nearby. "You can think of it as a Wicca." It's just transparent?" Samir scratched his head in confusion. "Yes, although you won't lose your memory and can still touch objects, you won't have a sense of smell or taste. So eating biko is irrelevant," Duke explained. "What? That's unacceptable," Samir protested, shaking his head vigorously. The thought of delicious food being tasteless was too depressing for him. Duke continued, "If you encounter an enemy you can't handle, run towards Diana or back to Karazhan immediately. I've left the door open for the three of you, and no one else can enter. If someone tries to force their way in, they'll get lost in the magic barrier outside." "Understood, boss," Samir replied. After greeting Robert Stack and playfully teasing Howard Jr., Duke prepared for the next step. By the way, Howard Jr. had grown into a handsome young man, maturing quickly and showing potential to be quite the charmer. On the night before his advancement, Duke was pursued relentlessly by the heroine for several hours, almost straining his back. "System, you can start," Duke said as he lay down. "Please let the host relax," the system instructed. "Okay," Duke replied. "Dimsum Fundi Kaisha Daudisu 10, 8, 7, 0. The system counted down in Chinese. Psychic separation. Enter the astral world. Duke had expected the process to be painful, given that his spirit was separating from his body. However, the experience was painless, only causing slight confusion and dizziness. Within 2 seconds, a deep drowsiness overcame him. It felt like falling onto soft cotton, sinking rapidly until he suddenly felt light, as if something had flown out of his body. In front of him was the universe? As Duke opened his eyes and adjusted to his surroundings, he was astonished to find himself in the dark expanse of the universe, with Earth beneath his feet and sparkling stars in the distance. Nearby, there were several portals, some close and others far away. Those must be the star realms, Duke mused. It was his first time entering the star realm, and the experience felt novel. He shook his head, kicked his feet, and flew towards the nearest portal gate. "Activate the second defense mechanism," the system announced. The three people in Karazhan were surprised to see Duke's room suddenly surrounded by a sphere glowing with purple light. Streams of arcane, flame, and frost halos partially covered the sphere, making it difficult to see inside. "What?" Diana noticed that only she could enter, while Carlos and Samir were blocked. "Activate Karazhan's highest defense mechanism," the system commanded. A low humming filled the air as various spells arranged on Karazhan's walls and surrounding enchantments came to life, forming large and small spell arrays. These arrays interlocked, creating a super-large, intricate formation. Karazhan began to disappear from the bottom up, replaced by woods in its original location. At the same time, the supreme mage Gu Yi, meditating in the temple of Shangdao, suddenly opened her eyes. She was shocked to receive news from New York. "What? You said Karazhan disappeared?" Reflecting on his recent workload, Duke thought, "In the past, my daily output was at most 6,000 plus words in 3 chapters. This month, I've updated nearly 20,000 words in 9,000 days and 10,000 plus in 6,000 days. It feels a bit overwhelming. With the old book finished, I feel both melancholic and tired. I need a rest. I'll sleep in tomorrow and get up in the afternoon." End of this chapter.